Kingston area. We attend there quite frequently, as well as the Glenwood, Colburn Street area, anywhere in red. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a breakdown of our 2020 break and enters. As I mentioned, there were 49 of them. So the black dots on the map on the top left, they just indicate where the occurrences happened. Now, I'm not going to give specific addresses. This is as as detailed as it's going to get as far as location breakdown. So there you can see where they occurred, the days of the weeks that they are most likely to occur. So Mondays and Wednesdays saw the highest number of break and enters reported. And then the time of day reported 9 o'clock, not uncommon to see early in the morning being, where we see a high volume of calls in regards to break and enters. And that's because, a lot of businesses and stuff, when they get there in the morning to open up, that's when they typically see that a break-in has occurred. And then you can see that June, November, and December were the highest months in relation to break and enters. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. 2020 theft of motor vehicles. So as you can see, we had 28 reported. Again, a breakdown of the location.
You've muted yourself, Hillary. No, the mute's still on, Hillary. Your mute's still on. I can see it. Okay.
Maria, do you have the capacity to unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
Sorry, it popped up and said the host muted me and I couldn't unmute myself. So I'm good now. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So again, you can see that the highest call volumes are Mondays and Wednesdays, followed by Saturdays. And then for the time of the day is 11 o'clock is when we typically receive the most calls for reported vehicle thefts. And then the breakdown of the months reported, highest being October, followed by November and December. Next slide, please. Okay, so 2020 thefts from motor vehicles, 75. Again, a breakdown of where they occurred, as well as the day of week reported. So Monday, Tuesday, Fridays saw the highest calls for service. And then it's quite spread out for the time of the day that it's reported. A lot of people think that they are occurring, throughout the overnight hours, which they tend to do, but we do also see quite a high number occurring throughout the day as well. And then February and March saw the highest number of calls. Oh, no, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, so February and March were significantly higher than any other month, followed by January and May, which saw 7. Next slide, please. Okay, so 2020 suspicious persons, again, like I said, 377 seems quite high. Our highest call for service is in relation to suspicious persons, so it's not out of the ordinary to see a high number. So there you can see where they occurred. The breakdown of the days of week reported, it's pretty consistent aside from Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. The remaining 4 days were quite consistent in the numbers, as well as the times of day, didn't fluctuate too much. And then for the months reported, it's not uncommon for us to see a decrease in the winter months just because there are less people outside. And next slide, please. Okay, so 2020 motor vehicle collisions. Again, Colburn Street, no surprise, big street, busy street. So we did see the majority of them in the area on Colburn Street. Mondays, Thursdays, Fridays, followed by Tuesdays, saw the highest number of incidents. Again, you can see there for the time of day reported, most of them are occurring when the majority of people are out driving around to work, from work, or just out throughout the day. And then for the months reported, pretty consistent throughout the winter months, and then it drops a bit in the summer months. But again, that's probably just due to inclement weather in the winter. Okay, next slide, please. So 2021 calls for service. So again, this is the previous presentation that I had done. So at the end of this, I will show the updates. So this portion that you're seeing right now went from January to August 30. So January 1st to August 31st of 2012. So the numbers are a little bit smaller in this next few slides as opposed to what we just saw. So from January 1st to August 31st of 2021, we responded to 421 focused calls for service. And the breakdown is 35 break and enters, 13 motor vehicle thefts, 35 thefts from motor vehicles, 266 suspicious persons, and 72 motor vehicle collisions. Next slide, please. Okay, and there is the hotspot map for the January to August calls for service. So again, similar area as you saw in 2020. Next slide, please. Okay, so the 2021 January to August break and enters, again, we had 35. You can see on there the locations. Highest calls for service were received on Tuesdays, and then quite an even breakdown of times of day there. And then the months reported, May, we saw the highest number of calls for service in those months studied, followed by April and January. Next slide, please. Okay, so 13 motor vehicle thefts were reported from January to August of 2021. And there you can see where they occurred. The days of the week reported, most were reported on Saturdays, followed by Mondays and Fridays. And then you can see the breakdown of the time of day they were reported, where most calls were received around between 1 and 2 in the afternoon. And then the highest months reported were July and March. Next slide, please. Okay, so for thefts from motor vehicles from January to August, there were 35 reported. You can see the locations. Monday and Tuesday were the highest number of calls for service received, followed by Saturday. And then the times of the day reported, again, like I said, late in the morning, early afternoons, not uncommon for us to receive calls for that. And then quite an even breakdown throughout the months there. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so 266 suspicious persons calls for service from January to August of last year. You can see they're quite spread out there. But again, a lot down in the Dalhousie Street, Wellington, Colston area. Pretty common area for them to occur. Days of the week are pretty similar to, aside from Fridays, which saw the highest. And then again, like 2020, you can see that we receive calls for service in relation to suspicious persons every hour, all the time. So April, for whatever reason, saw a very high number. Maybe it was warm this April, I can't remember. But so April, May, June saw the highest calls for service there. Next slide, please. Okay, so 72 motor vehicle collisions were reported from January to August of 2021. Again, Colburn Street saw the highest concentration of them. And Mondays and Fridays were the busiest people getting to work and people coming home from work, maybe. And then again, same hours seen as the previous year, all during the day when everybody's out and about. And May, March, and August were the highest numbers of calls for service. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the updated stuff. So the last 4 months of the year. So from September to December of 2021, we responded to 198 focus calls for service. So that's a total of 619 focus calls for service for all of 2021. So 8 break and enters for a total of 43, 9 motor vehicle thefts for a total of 22, 31 thefts for motor vehicles, totaling 66. Suspicious persons, 103 there, so for a total of 369 for the year, and 47 motor vehicle collisions for a total of 119. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, there's the hotspot map for that. So again, it's spread out a little more than it was for the months prior for 2021, but again, still quite concentrated in the Dartling, Dalhousie, Poolston, as well as like the Glenwood, Colburn, Woodman area. Next slide, please. Okay, so, Okay, so we had the 8 break and enters in the last 4 months of 2021. You can see them there on the map, quite spread out. So sorry, I should say too, the darker lines that you see on here are the updated ones. The lighter ones are from the rest of the year. So the darker ones are the updates there. So Fridays saw the most with 4, followed by Thursdays with 2, and then Sundays and Tuesdays each had 1. And then for the time of day reported, 8 o'clock in the morning. Again, that's typically when people are arriving at work to see that their businesses have been broken into. And then 3, 4, and 5 o'clock also saw some. May still the highest number for that year. None reported in November, 3 in September, October, and then 2 in December. Next slide, please. So thefts of motor vehicles, 9 reported in the last 4 months of the year. And there you can see where they occurred. So Tuesdays, we received the highest number of calls at 3, followed by Thursdays and Fridays at 2, and then 1 call on a Monday. And then a breakdown of the times of day reported. 3 o'clock in the afternoon saw the highest number, followed by the remaining numbers there, and those all had 1. 4 o'clock a.m., 6 o'clock a.m., 5 p.m., 10 a.m., 6 p.m. You can see that there. July still the highest number of reported occurrences in the month. And then 2 for September, October, November, and then 3 for December. Next slide, please. Okay, so thefts from motor vehicles, we have 31 reported in the last 4 months of 2021. See a breakdown of the occurrence locations there. For the days of the week reported, highest number was reported on Wednesdays, followed by Saturdays and Sundays, which each saw 5. Mondays, Tuesdays had 4, and then Thursday, Friday. So the time of days reported, so we had 3 reported at 4 a.m. and the remaining all occurred, in the early mornings and into the late evenings. And November was the highest month of the year for thefts from motor vehicles for 2021, where there were 10, 9 in October, 7 in September, and then 5 in December. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so suspicious persons, 103 for the last 4 months of the year. Again, a high concentration down kind of in the Colborne, Glenwood area, Poolston area. So they were pretty evenly spread out. Wednesdays and Saturdays saw 22, Thursday saw 16, Tuesday 13, Fridays 12, et cetera. And again, like I mentioned before, it's a call for service that we receive at all hours of the day. So as far as the months reported for the final 4 months, 25 calls in September, 25 in October, 20 in November, and 33 in December. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and then for the motor vehicle collisions, we saw 47 from September to December of 2021. Again, Colborne Street, seeing the highest concentration of them. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays had the highest number of collisions. And then again, throughout the day when everybody's out on the roads. December saw the highest number reported with 18, followed by November, September, and then October with 8 for the remaining 4 months, sorry. And that is everything for that one.
Thank you. And now you'll have the report about what we did from what we heard from the last meeting on concerned with speeding and I think running stop signs and so forth.
So I'm not sure. Inspector Bell Sampson was supposed to do this portion. She did, however, ask me to create a map and some charts and stuff. So that's what I have tonight. I don't know if she was going to go into any more detail. So all I can present to you tonight is what I have provided to her. So we can go through that now if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Sure. Okay, so from September 10th to November 5th is the time frame that I was asked to look into. So Brantford Police Service issued 202 provincial offense notices for traffic-related violations. I'm sorry if you can see my child popping in the background for traffic-related violations in the Echo Place area. Additionally, there were 59 warnings given to drivers. And during this time frame, 12 motor vehicle collisions were reported. So you can see a breakdown there. Again, like I mentioned before, Colburn Street is the highest number. Next page, please. Okay, so charges laid by time of day. So again, you can see early in the mornings, and then after work is when we saw the highest number of charges laid. I don't have a breakdown as to what the charges were in relation to whether it be speeding or anything else, any issues with vehicles or anything. So most of them are speeding related though. Next graph, thank you. So charges laid by day of the week. So we can see Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday are typically when most charges were laid. And then there's just a breakdown of the numbers below, showing you how many were laid. Okay, warnings given by time of day, again, 7 a.m. So early morning, and then after work, when we saw the highest number of warnings given, and then a breakdown down below of how many occurred during each hour. And then warnings given by day of week. So Saturdays, Thursdays were the highest, and then Tuesday, Friday, Sunday saw 7, and Monday and Wednesday saw 6. Is that it? Okay. Perfect. Yeah, that's everything then.
And thank you, Hillary. And I know that when I attended the police service board meeting, the chief made it pretty clear that one of the residents had talked about an particular individual that was running a stop sign on a regular basis, and maybe the chief can talk to that. So, Chief Davis, please.
Actually, yeah, I was just going to say that that second to speeding, the neighborhood identified the running of stop signs as being an issue. So that was the second biggest focus of the focused enforcement there. So, and exactly, you can tell the story, Councillor Carpenter, but right, the speeding was number one, but the running of stop signs was the second biggest event we dealt with.
Yeah, the residents had talked about a particular stop sign and the same individual that would run it every morning on a particular morning at a particular time. And of course, they all witnessed him getting his ticket for running that stop sign the very next day. And they witnessed the presence of police out there, and they seen a gigantic improvement in the neighborhood when it comes to running stop signs. And they witnessed other people stopping, coming to full stops that maybe had did the rolling stops. But the presence of the police was very welcome to the neighborhood, and much well received by all the constituents. We heard Councillor Antosky and I got emails and phone calls the very next week, so we did get great response. So we do appreciate that work. Is there any questions from the public on the report of the speeding and the crime in the neighborhood for the police?
So just so everyone knows, anybody that might be unfamiliar with Zoom, there's a participants box, or you can see a raise hand function right at the bottom of your screen if you hover over it. If you do that, then Maria will help queue up whoever is next in queue, and we will have anybody available to answer your questions. I see that the chief has his hand up first.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Councillor Antosky and Councillor Carpenter. The meeting you ran in September is why we were able to do what we did. You ran a great meeting. I've been very vocal to the police board. Anyone asked, how did we do what we did in your ward? And I've told everyone to reach out to you two for the playbook. And I really want to thank you and everybody that took part in that call, because it was a well-run meeting that gave some real definite targets for us to look at. The speeding, if you look at that map on Colburn Street that Hillary had up for the speeding, everybody made it loud and clear. That was the stretch. People called it the Indy 500. Similarly with the stop sign. So it allowed us some, 3 or 4 key areas to focus in on. And so we would not have been able to do what we did without you two running such a great meeting, and all the participants being so respectful and giving meaningful feedback that we could then action. So I want to thank you two, and to the people that took part in that, they helped us create some definite areas to focus in on.
Thank you, Chief. That was the residents certainly were very respectful, and that was very helpful. Maria, do we have anybody with any questions?
Yes, we do, Counselor. Jean Pinchero has a question, so I'm just gonna allow talk now. So
Yep,
you
okay.
can go ahead, Jean.
You're on mute, Gene. Just press your mute button.
Hello?
We
There
can
you go.
hear
Go
now,
ahead.
Jean.
Okay, yes, we've had a new stop sign installed on Hamilton Ave. And everybody is literally blowing it. It's a four-way stop.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with where I'm talking about, Mr. Carpenter?
Yeah, is it, which one is it, Hamilton and Albemarle, or is it, yeah, it's probably Hamilton and Albemarle.
No, it wouldn't be Albemarle. They haven't installed that one yet. It's the one, the other one that we were supposed, the first one that we were supposed to get two on Hamilton Ave. They haven't done Albemarle yet.
Okay,
Do you know where I'm talking about?
yes, I do. I thought it was Albemarle, but I'm gonna just have to go
It
to my
would be
map.
Avondale.
Avondale, yes,
That's
I'm
the one I'm
sorry,
thinking
yes, I should know. Avondale, yes. They've
Avondale,
installed
Crescent
it,
Avondale Street, yes.
right, they just installed it a month ago. Now, I was expecting the usual roll-in stops because it is a quiet intersection, it's a four-way, but there are two or three the individuals that I witnessed while I was out walking that are literally blowing through there at probably 70 kilometers minimum, 80 kilometers an hour, because they're coming the full length of Hamilton Ave right now from Cumberland. And they've
Yes.
got before they hit Colburn, and then they're braking hard. I mean, they're just blowing through that stop sign like crazy. It's, and I'm wondering if we could get a bit of enforcement out here just to try and get things under control a bit. Because I think that Hamilton Ave has been open for so long with no stop signs. These people are just, used to not, this isn't even a question of, I think it's a question of there could be a lot of animosity from some folks in the neighborhood that there is a stop sign there, and there are people that have been going to work or whatever, blowing down the street, and now it's just, a defiance.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, that's correct. And Hamilton was no stop signs on it whatsoever, all the way to Cumberland. And Cumberland got opened up to Gray Street with that development. And I think
Right.
a lot of the new residents on Gray Street, I think, began to think that was a new shortcut to Colburn Street. So
yeah.
that's hence the two stop signs, but one's in and the other one's still got to get the locates done. But
Yeah, I was just talking to the clerk the other day and phone about, he contacted me, said the other one is coming, but they have to do the locates, etc. Now, hopefully that'll slow them down a bit, but right now they're just winding up there like they always have been. And I was just amazed at the speed they're going through the stop sign. It's not even like braking, and they're just blowing through it like it's not there. So there's still pedestrians and things like that, kids riding their bikes and everything that probably assume that the cars are going to stop. I don't know, but
yeah, and I'm just wondering if we should coordinate that review of that stop sign with the engineering department for when the second one goes in, so that may as well do
yeah, that's true.
And I saw the chief take a note when you mentioned the intersection, so
Yeah, well,
I think
thank
you're
you.
in good hands.
Well, I appreciate that very much then. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Have a good night.
Thanks for taking care of the neighborhood, Gene. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who do we have next, Maria?
Next, we have Chris. Chris, go ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, Chris.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
good afternoon. I have a question regarding the stats that Hillary just rolled out. I know you kind of mentioned that the suspicious persons call is nothing to worry about. And I was the one who mentioned that on the last meeting in September, because I think that's a big deal. And I think that's where the disconnect is between the police and the homeless, drug addicted people are. So I guess my question is, the suspicious numbers, do those occurrences all receive an incident report?
Hillary?
Yep, every call for service that we receive, an occurrence number is associated to it. But there's there's this connotation of suspicious persons calls for service being correlated to a crime occurring, and that's not always the case. In fact, oftentimes it's not. It's just somebody that sees somebody they don't recognize in the area and calls it in. So there's not always, you know, a criminal nature to these calls for service. I understand that some do for sure, but not always. But yes, every call for service that we receive has a number associated to it.
Okay, and do we have any data on, and I think I asked this question before, do we have any data on if it's the same person reoccurring over and over again?
Not specific data, but from, you know, me going through these stats on a daily basis, yes, we do frequently see a lot of suspicious person calls for service involving the same individuals.
Okay, and what are we doing to reach out to those same individuals that may or may not be affected by an overdose or by an addiction, excuse me, or by homelessness? Are we reaching out to those repeat occurrences and somehow connecting them to community services, or no?
Yeah, we absolutely do. But again, all like the suspicious persons calls for service are not all related to, you know, people who are on drugs or homeless. It's a like large different, you know, population of individuals that we receive calls for, not just one specifically related to drugs or homelessness. But yes, we do offer numerous resources to individuals that we feel require them for sure.
Okay, that's great. But does the data break down the reasons for the suspicious call? Like, do we have information about that? Or it's just a suspicious person, they just look suspicious, they're wandering around the neighborhood, they're going on to someone's front porch, they're pulling on someone's door handle to see if the car will open and stuff like that? Is that what I'm to expect to understand? Or
our calls aren't broken down by that. It's just a matter of whether or not the officer that attends the call puts that information in their report. But again, a suspicious person call could be for literally somebody just walking down the street that that person doesn't recognize. It's not all somebody doing something. It could just be somebody out for a walk.
And so just in detail, if a police officer shows up on the scene of a repeat offender, say one that's repeated at the top of the top 10 list, do they get them in contact with the services? You know, do they hand them a telephone so they can call? How do they connect them right away?
Well, we don't have, again, I don't know, like, I feel like you are referring to, I don't know how to word this, but I think that you are just thinking that all of our calls for service are in relation to people who require assistance, and they aren't at all. Again, like we don't hand the phones over to the individuals, but we provide them with phone numbers, you know, emails, anything that we can provide them with to, you know, for them to get in touch with services.
Okay, that's great. Perhaps Chief Davis can weigh in on this one.
Yeah.
We have Sergeant Amber Jackson's, I believe she's on the group. She can speak to this. So I just need to clarify a couple of things. Is one, we're a little bit hamstrung because of our reporting system. We are part of a cooperative that we don't have the ability internally to create subcodes for suspicious persons. It's a vision of mine that we become a self-sustaining reporting system in the future if we go with the new building, so that we can do that with ease, because I'm a data fanatic. I would love to have that data as well. So we're a little bit hamstrung on that it turns into a manual exercise. The other part of it is a lot of the people we deal with drug addiction or that are homeless don't want the help. So quite often they're pretty candid with the officers, what we can do and where we can go. But I'll ask Sergeant Jackson to jump in here for the ones. The officers quite often will make the referrals of the repeat offenders that have say mental health issues to our MCURT team, but I'll ask Sergeant Jackson to jump in here and explain how that works.
I don't believe we have Sergeant Jackson here.
Just hang on a second. Let me look at the participants. I thought I saw her on the call earlier.
And forgive me if this is an appropriate time to talk about this, because I know Cheryl had mentioned this is just any questions regarding the data that Hillary rolled out.
Yeah.
So if you want to bring this up at a later time in the meeting, that's fine.
Okay, and Chris, we do have an outreach team. The city has an outreach team that's available for homeless or addiction that is part of, it can always be referred to and is often referred to in similar situations.
Right.
So looking at the list here, Sergeant Jackson is not on the call. There was a bit of a mix-up. We initially thought 6. So if it's okay,
We can go back to that at 6.
if she joins us at 6, can we revisit it at that time, please?
Yep, that's perfect. And Chris, it was a mix-up in the meeting schedule that was on the notice. So instead of starting at 6, it said 5. So we're started early. So if some can't make it, we'll get that straightened out. Maria, who do we have next?
I don't see any other hands raised right now. So perhaps we move through the agenda and there may be some other questions later.
We can always come back. This was to let people know what we did. Okay, and now I'd like to introduce Mandy Semmel and Paul McDougall from the Neighborhood Alliance. Mandy and Paul, could you give us an update again on the safety toolkit and the community neighborhood watch program that you are all involved in? Who wants to go, Mandy?
Hi. Okay, first of all, thanks for having us again tonight. So for anyone that wasn't here the last time, so we're part of the Neighborhood Alliance of Brantford Safe Communities that's working along with all of the neighborhood associations to improve community safety in our neighborhoods. So we're working on a toolkit and resources and have a upcoming time to go to council. But I'm just going to give you an update as to what we've done since the last time we were here. So the last time we were here, we were talking about how we were going to have a community survey go out to the community. And so I'm pleased to say that the Neighborhood Alliance of Brantford Safe Communities survey launched on October the 20th and remained open through November 19th. We received 553 total surveys from every neighborhood of Brantford. The Eastward Echo Place neighborhood had the second highest amount of survey participation. So we want to say thank you for that. We truly value and appreciate the feedback that you've all sent in. So great job. Although we're still sifting through the data as well as the responses from residents, some of the key highlights that we want to share are that 33% of respondents said they would be interested in participating in programs that support and educate both their neighborhoods and individuals about crime prevention. 54% of the respondents said that they had already taken steps to make their homes safer in the past year. 74.56% of respondents said they feel safe going for walks and visiting parks in their neighborhoods. So we were excited to hear that. And 90% of respondents said they know their neighbors. And we think that's huge. So we were really excited to hear that everybody's knowing their neighbors. And then 97% of respondents said they look out for their neighbors, properties, and best interests. So that's so amazing to hear that, because that means we're all taking care of each other. So the results confirm that safety in our neighborhoods is important to all of us, and that neighbors are willing to work together to make it safe for their families and their friends and each other. So once we've gone through all of the results, we'll be sharing them back to our community. So keep an eye out for that. The next steps for us we will be continuing to work towards safer neighborhoods through education, resources, and working together with our neighbors, BPS, and city staff while preparing for our report to council, where we'll be sharing our research into community watch best practices and our recommendations to support the safety of neighborhoods that we all love. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I just make a comment,
Sure.
Councilor Carpenter, before we move on? I just want to highlight this piece about community development and knowing your neighbors. The police have been amazing at helping us along and identifying the issues, but they can only do so much. And so knowing your neighbors is probably one of the biggest pieces that will create a safer neighborhood. So we do have some restrictions with COVID for sure, but when things lift, really having those community picnics, going out on your porch and meeting your neighbor, they are probably some of the easiest and most important things to do to safeguard your neighborhood. It puts eyes on the street. And when you're feeling uncomfortable in your neighborhood and you're locking yourself inside, it's actually the exact wrong thing to do. Get everybody out, get everybody to know each other. This is the single most cost-effective way to build back your communities and make them safe. So thank you to our neighbor. And if you are not involved in your neighborhood association, please get involved with your neighborhood association. They're looking out for you, and they want your input to know what needs to be addressed. Thanks, Councillor.
Yeah, and you can do that by getting in touch with the city's website. All the neighborhood associations are listed there. Their phone numbers are there. Their emails are there. Paul is, I believe, the president of the East Ward Echo Place Neighborhood Association, or co-chair. I don't know. It's co-chair at the meetings, but Paul, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add, except this is all true. Neighbors and neighborhood associations. Someone on our executive, she goes by the tenet of knowing at least 5 of her neighbors around her. So, and that's just, you're the nucleus, and you work your way out from there. So
yeah, and I would encourage those participants listening and those listening on YouTube to do just that. As Councillor Antosky has said, we should all know our neighbors. And be the nosy neighbor, even if you got a knock on the door. It's good to have their phone number. If you have noticed anything strange going on, their neighbor, they watch your house, you watch their house, but you also watch them. And it's more important now with COVID, because a lot of people are locking themselves in their homes, and you have a lot of seniors that are very, very frightened in their home with COVID, and they just need to know that someone's around to care. So it's very helpful to have a be the nosy neighbor, as I would call it. There's nothing wrong with that. That makes for safe neighborhoods. So, and thank you for everything that you're doing, Mandy. I know you're involved with the Eagle Place Neighborhood Association, and Paul with the Sport Echo Place. You've been involved. You provide your time free. You give us many, many hours. You do a lot of creations in the neighborhood. You make the community a better place for everything that you're doing. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely remarkable, and we will love you for it. We want to make sure we get as many people involved as we possibly can. Any questions for the Neighborhood Association from any of the participants online tonight? Maria, do we have anybody that's interested in speaking to the neighborhood associations?
I do have a raised hand. I'm not sure if it's a city staff person, but I'm going to let him talk.
No, Norris.
Go ahead, Norris.
Yeah, hi there. Both a community member of Echo Place as well as a city employee, but I'm speaking more as a private citizen today right now. This is, I'm not sure who can answer this better, whether it be the police or neighborhood association. When it comes to security cameras and Ring doorbells, you may have heard of, there was a case, I think it was in England, where someone was sued for footage captured on their cameras. While in my case, it would be unintentionally capturing a neighbor, and security footage. There were a few incidents I had in the past where something has occurred in the neighborhood and the police had stopped by to ask if I had any footage that would aid them in understanding their investigation. What is the stance when it comes to that? I mean, I don't have any security cameras up patrolling the neighborhood and my streets per se. It's pointing at my driveway on my lawn of my home, but there are some views that capture a portion of the neighbors. Are there any legal things that myself or others should be aware of when it comes to use of those things within Ontario or Canada in general?
Well, Norris, that's a tough one because we have no legal representation here. I just know Brian Hutchings. Thank you, Brian, our CAO.
It's not legal representation. I can't provide legal advice. It's more about process to Norris's question I can through Mr. Councillor Carpenter. There was a notice motion brought forth to council and approved about coming back to council with a fortification bylaw, Norris, what the rules are and what people can do and what have you. We just received our first draft of that from our legal department. It's in my possession. We're working with the police to make sure it works with their rules and things like that. We plan on bringing it forth probably when things work probably in the February cycle as a bylaw and have council debate that after we get some input from the police to make sure it works with them as well as us, or March, Norris. That it's in process and the details are in there, and I don't, until it gets kind of reviewed and vetted and things like that, I can't really reveal the details at this point in time, Norris.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Norris. But I do know from past lessons that if you have a security cameras up, And if you put a sign up saying you have security cameras up and you actually don't have them running, that can create another problem in itself. Someone has an expectation of safety and it doesn't actually exist. That could become a legal quagmire. But security cameras, I think, are a good thing around your house. I think light sensors are a good thing around your house as well. I have them. Lots of people have them. It's a way to ward off those that think that your driveway is free access. But mine keeps going off by the local animals, rabbits and squirrels. But I have to adjust it. Thanks for the question, Norris. You have any more questions for us, Norris?
None at all, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I know where you are. Okay. Any further questions on this subject for us, Maria?
Yes, we do have another member attendee who wants to ask a question, Deborah Jansen.
Okay, Deborah, go ahead.
Hi. Okay, so my question is, because the Brantford site is not easy to navigate often when you're looking for links or information, is it possible that we can have the neighborhood, forgive me, I forget the name of it.
Neighborhood associations, yep.
Thank you. If they could, if we could have those links emailed to us.
Yeah, and Deborah, you, at the end of this, you're going to see, or you can email Councilor Antosky or myself, and we'll make sure that gets to you. And our emails are really simple. It's just, as you see on the screen, it's Councilor Richard Carpenter or Councilor Cheryl Antosky, and it's at brantford.ca.
Okay, perfect.
So every councilor is at brantford.ca, and we'll send you that link for sure. And thanks for wanting to do that. But they certainly welcome you.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, Deborah, the emails don't have the word counselor in front of them. They're just our full names. So Richard Carpenter at brantford.ca and Cheryl Antosky.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Look at that, how good they look. Thank you, Maria. You can take a picture of that if anybody wants to have that.
Can you see that, Deborah, so that they can? Okay, and that'll be at the.
I was just about to get my camera.
We'll post it again later.
Wait, it's going back up for you, Deborah. Hang on. There you go. And that customer contact at Brantford is any concerns or complaints that you have, use that customer service contact. It works very well. Thank you.
Also, Deborah, just a note on the website. If you use the search bar on the homepage and you just type in the keywords neighborhood association, it will take you to the NAB page, the Neighborhood Alliance page on the city website, and you'll see all the different associations, and some of them have their own sites. So they're hyperlinked, and the links will take you to the exact association you're looking for.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for taking the time to explain all that, because I'm sure there's other people other than myself that heard that also might do the same.
That's why we're here. Thanks.
Excellent.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Maria, do we have anybody else who wants to ask questions on the neighborhood associations or the police at this time?
Not right now, Councillor.
Okay, and then I'll move it over to Cheryl. Hope we're ready for traffic. I know we're way ahead of schedule, but that's okay. I'll turn the agenda over to you, Cheryl.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Next we have our manager of traffic services, David Ferguson. He's going to be making the presentation. And we also have Eric Bilkvist on hand for any technical questions. Basically what our traffic department did was kind of what we talked about at the beginning, is they looked at the whole neighborhood. They listened to all of the concerns that everybody talked about, the stop signs, the crosswalks, the speeds, the parking, the direction of the streets. And they looked at it all together and have come up with some options or things to consider. So we ask everybody to come with an open mind. Some of them are very minor. Some of them will require some thinking and to really picture something very different. So thank you, David. Go ahead.
All right. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year, and hope everybody had a wonderful holiday. And thank you for taking the time this evening to attend this meeting and to go over what we've come up with. Just see. Maria, am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to, David. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not letting me do it.
Okay, I'll do something. Just a second.
So while we're doing that, so as you may recall at the last meeting, it was really an opportunity for Eric and I to receive feedback and information from the residents to hear what some of the concerns were and where the concerns are. And we went out and after that meeting and sort of did a review of the neighborhood and put together a plan based on what we were finding in the area and to be able to address some of those concerns. So, still not working.
Yeah, I'm not able to change you. So I'm going to get Norris back on since he's paying attention to the meeting here and get him to make you a co-host. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Now, as Cheryl said, keep in mind this review that David has done in his report is based upon all the questions from everybody that attended the December 9th meeting. And when he reviewed it with Councilor Toski and I, it was clear that he had covered off everything and then some. So we were pretty pleased with his response. So I'm sure you will be, but it's important that you hear it before we can bring it to council to be enacted. And while I have Councilor Martin here, Councilor Martin and his ward mate, Councilor McCreary, are pretty proactive in going to the ward, getting a lot of streets are 40 kilometers in Ward 3 now, and they have a lot of stop signs when the residents requested them, put them to the ward, and they've come to council over the last probably 6 months, quite a few actually. So same, we're just trying to do ours in a different process, but every council is working on the same concerns. Okay, are we there yet, David?
Yeah, David, you should be able to now.
Perfect, thank you. There we go. Yeah, so again, so we really looked at this from, as I talked about last time, from almost a neighborhood livability, neighborhood safety perspective, and trying to create sort of a tight-knit community for the residents. And one of the things, we'll start the south end of sort of the neighborhood, Locks and Mohawk, and one of the things I noticed here was, you know, you have a roadway where it's rural in nature, and then all of a sudden you come into a subdivision. So one of the things we're proposing here, and you'll see this throughout the presentations, but essentially we want to reduce the speed limit before people actually get into the neighborhood. We don't want them being in the neighborhood and then saying slow down. We want to get them in advance, as well as I'm really big on active transportation and providing the infrastructure and resources available to assist people in being active in our communities. So we are proposing for a pedestrian crossing to be installed at the trail. The next thing we're looking at now, obviously we're working our way north here on the Locks, and I know that the speeds along here have been a concern in the past, and we have the DSS boards, the digital speed boards. And so one of the things we're proposing here, we'll continue to operate those, but we are proposing that we buy a number of these digital boards that we can rotate and be specific to the neighborhood and rotate those around the neighborhood. One of the things we find with the digital boards is when they're usually up for a period longer than a month, compliance usually starts to drop off. So it's probably better that we move them around. Usually people see them and they know that, oh, there's been a bit of an issue here, so they will slow down. But it's sort of human nature. People have a tendency to go back to the way they were driving in their habits. So that's why we're proposing to rotate them throughout the neighborhood. The other thing that's important here, and what we're proposing is implementing some type of physical measure, whether it's curb bump outs or sort of center islands that cause a deflection for the motor vehicles. that they have to drive around, so they're not just driving in a straight line. Obviously, as a motorist, if you're able to drive in a straight line, you're more comfortable. It has a tendency you'll drive a bit faster. So if we can really narrow down the lanes, the lane widths, that'll help to take away the comfort level of the motorists, and that usually results in lower speeds. And so we're proposing 3 locations along here. They would have some impacts to parking, but we would look at locations where there's fire hydrants and things like that, where it has less of an impact. The next area was Glenwood. One of the things we heard about was sort of the school zone. And again, you'll see the speed limit changes. So we recently did have a speed limit policy that went to council, that council supported and approved. And as part of that, we will be looking to reduce the speed limit for the school zone here on the local road to 30 kilometers an hour. And then also highlighting sort of the school area using some of these centerline knockdowns, they're called. They come in different forms. You'll see them as just posts. Sometimes you'll see them with these types of signs on there. We're also proposing, there's currently a designated school crossing in front of the school. However, there's apparently no actual school crossing guard there. So that is actually illegal under the Highway Traffic Act. If you have to have if you have a designated school crossing like this, you have to have an actual crossing guard. So what we're proposing is converting that to a pedestrian crossover. And I was in touch with the school and the principal and had a discussion with them on what we were proposing. And he seemed quite interested and supportive of what we have laid out here. We also look at adding the center lines, making sure the center lines are in there, and then modifying the no stopping section a little bit further to the west to make sure the sight lines on the approach to the school are nice and clear. So this is probably one of the ones that Councillor Antosky was referring to, being a bit different. So one of the things that we talked about earlier is about sort of the connectivity of the neighborhood and providing infrastructure for pedestrians. So we are proposing an always stop at Glenwood and Locks, and it's currently controlled by, or there's currently a school crossing guard here. However, people are walking and traveling the neighborhood outside of the school hours, and that infrastructure isn't in place. So we are proposing to make this an always stop to provide that traffic control for not only vehicles, but obviously for pedestrians and cyclists. The other thing we're proposing is a directional closure. So one of the things we heard at the last meeting was motorists are shortcutting the signalized intersection at Locks and Colburn. So they're using Glenwood to bypass that traffic signal at Colburn and using some of the other side streets. So what we're proposing here is that we restrict that westbound movement. And if you see at the bottom of the screen there, sort of just an example of what we were proposing to actually not allow that movement. So you'd only be able to go eastbound through this intersection. This is something that is common in many municipalities. They use this. I know in my previous place of employment, we had a very similar type street configuration as this, and this was something that we actually put in, and it worked very well. So this is something we're hoping to use to address a lot of the issues. We also heard last meeting that people were using Robinson and Echo Villa, so this will help to address that type of issue. And then to the east along Glenwood, again, it's a long section of roadway, it's pretty straight as an arrow. We're proposing just some changes to the roadway configuration to add some center type islands to again, divert the vehicles and motorists around to try and get them to slow down along this section of roadway. And again, 40 kilometers. Essentially, the whole neighborhood we're proposing to be 40 kilometers an hour. With the exception of the school zones, they will obviously be 30 kilometers an hour. And again, here's just an example highlighting the school zones and speed limit reductions. The yield signs that were in place, I think we've actually already converted those to stop signs, if I recall correctly. The other thing too with always stops would be for us to enhance the pavement markings at those locations so that they're more visible to the motorists, and hopefully that'll help to take care of getting people to try and slow down or come to that complete stop when they approach those locations. And along Forest, just identifying a number of locations there that there were some side streets, proposing just some pedestrian crossovers to connect to the trails and the parks in that area. Just some added, again, infrastructure to assist the pedestrians in the area. And then again, identifying Forest Road as a location for the rotational digital speed boards. Garden Avenue, so at Gray Street, the location was, we did complete a turning movement count. It is close to being warranted for an always stop. So we are recommending that the always stop going now. No point in waiting. It's on its way there. It's almost there. So be proactive and put those controls in place. And then just improving the existing center island that's in place and coming up with maybe a bit of a better design to help assist in controlling some of the traffic and concerns in that area. I know there's also discussions about enhancing the cycling network through this area. So we would be working with our active transportation group to also bring that forward. At Brennan, there's currently an always stop in place. And one of the things we heard was that there were concerns with people rolling through that stop or not coming to a stop. And one of the things we identified in looking at that it was an unwarranted location with minimal side street traffic. And that's something, throughout my career, it's something I've seen where stop signs go in and you have minimal side street traffic and these concerns start coming forward. So I think there are opportunities to address that would be better suited in terms of infrastructure. And in this case, we're recommending a pedestrian crossover, as well as we want to look at this as potential for a raised crossing. So the crosswalk location itself would actually be raised above the roadway platform. And that does a couple of things. One, it highlights the pedestrian obviously being on the roadway, puts them at a different level to the motorist's eye. So they're obviously much more clear to the motorists when they're traveling through the roadway, as well as it helps to provide an area where vehicles will slow down as they go over the raised crossing.
David, if I may interrupt for 1 second, would you mind just taking a moment to just briefly explain the PXOs, the pedestrian crossovers? These are fairly new to Brantford, and I suspect we're talking about category D, which I think have no lights, but still require drivers to stop when there's a pedestrian there. Maybe if you could just take a minute to explain.
Yeah, so a pedestrian crossover. So this was brought in by the province maybe about 2 years ago, changes to the Highway Traffic Act. And what a pedestrian crossover is, it's a location that's identified by signs and markings. There's various levels, but what the regulations really cover off is the actual sign and the markings. So whenever you see these types of crossings, and there's an example of design drawing there on the page, whenever you see these locations, and if there's a pedestrian staying at the side of the road looking to cross the roadway, legally the motor vehicle must come to a complete stop and allow the pedestrian to cross the full width of the roadway before they proceed. And there's also now this location, for example, this location may have flashers included with it. We have some locations where we have flashers. It's all dependent on volume and geometrics and things like that that are identified in the Ontario Traffic Manual that we go by. But like I said before, the regulations are specific to the signs and the actual pavement markings. For a pedestrian themselves, they are also bound by the regulations. So that it does state that when a pedestrian comes to the edge of the roadway, they must come to a stop. They must observe traffic to ensure that there's a safe gap distance for a vehicle to make a complete stop, and then they can proceed across the roadway. And as the councillor mentioned, these are starting to pop up at various locations throughout the city. I think this might be the fourth one I've identified here in this project. So, and we've probably got about another 10 or 15 coming probably next year at various other locations throughout the city.
Thanks, David. I think that's excellent, especially when you're talking about removing a stop sign, how this is much more efficient and still consider safety. Thank you for that explanation.
Also at the last meeting, I know a resident had brought up some concerns in this area, Brandon Thomas Bolster. I did take a drive through the area after the meeting. I do have to give our planning group some credit. The roadway design in here has been done quite well. It's sort of smaller sections of roadway where the geometrics change. You don't have a lot of straight runs or roads. And the roadways are narrower than compared to some other locations I've seen. So there's nothing really major I was able to identify in terms of implementing here from a traffic calming perspective. However, I did identify enhancing the playground area. As I mentioned before, I had done this presentation a bit ago. So again, I would recommend that we set a neighborhood speed limit of 40 kilometers an hour, and then these playground zones we would actually set to 30 kilometers per hour as per our policy. And then for Gray Street, in looking at the location, there are definitely some opportunities for enhancing markings and signage. We did identify here an always stop for Patterson with enhanced markings, and then enhancing the crosswalks throughout the section of the roadway. I'm also proposing that for the existing cycling infrastructure, we look at locations in areas where we can sort of add some bollards, some bike bollards. I refer to them as, again, just to narrow the visual perception to the motorists of the roadway width, and which of course turns around and hopefully helps to reduce vehicle speeds. And then as the chief and police talked about earlier, Colburn Street was an item that was brought up at the last meeting and concerns with that. And looking at overall, it's a major arterial 4-lane roadway with a dual left center turn lane. It is identified in the TMP as corridor 4 improvements. So what we're recommending is that through any reconstruction, redevelopment type project for Colburn Street, that the roadway be reevaluated to look at it through a complete street lens. There is an organization called NACTO. They have created a design guide that talks about various types of complete streets designs. Based on what I was reading, it identified Colburn Street would be identified as a neighborhood main street. So at the bottom there, you can just see a bit of an example of the kinds of things that NACTO looks at for these types of changes and implementing complete streets. And complete streets is really looking at it from a road user perspective rather than a motor vehicle perspective. It's looking at it from, from the face of a building to the opposite side face of the building. So it's looking at pedestrians, it's looking at transit, it's looking at cycling, it's obviously looking at motorists, it's looking at goods and services movements, and how you can accommodate all of those through these complete streets designs. So our recommendation is that would be part of a bigger project that needs to be undertaken. It would need obviously an EA to complete. So our recommendation is that it gets covered through that process. So our next steps, provided we have support here, we would move forward with a report to the Vision Zero Committee, outlining obviously the process that we've taken here, the support of residents, councillors, outlining the implementation plan. There are a couple of stages I see here. Looking at some quick wins, I call them opportunities. Things where we have some existing capital or operating budgets that we can utilize to get things in sooner rather than later, obviously in 2022. And then we have some longer items or medium range or long term where we're going to have to submit for some funding requests through the budget process because they are higher amounts. And so that's what we're proposing. Depending how we go this evening, staff would then start working on that report to submit to the Vision Zero Committee and Council. And hopefully, if all goes well and we have approvals, we'd be looking at late spring, early summer to start seeing some of these quick wins being installed.
Thank you, David. Excellent presentation. Lots to think about. So we either are going to have a lot of people in the queue with a lot of questions or nobody because everybody has to contemplate all of those, those pieces. How are we doing there, Maria?
We've got about 6 raised hands.
All right.
So I think it was so thorough that people just want to keep hearing more. That was great, David. Okay, we're going to start with Bill Poisson, since he hasn't asked a question yet. So go ahead, Bill.
Hey, thank you all for having this meeting again. Colburn Street issues where I live, where all the speeding occurs, is not being addressed at all in this presentation. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks, Bill. We did address that a little bit at the beginning with traffic, but maybe we need to get some more enforcement out there for the speeding, and we can talk to Chief about that. And as David said, in terms of design, it's a longer term project, but we are certainly hearing that we hear a lot of speeding along there.
Specific questions.
Okay, go ahead, Maria. Anybody next?
Yep, we're going to go to Mary Lou Rudder next. Go ahead, Mary Lou.
Yes, I'm reiterating, I guess, as to what the previous caller said about nothing happening on Colburn East from in the speed zone. I was wondering why we don't have some of the portable speed of the traffic signs that have been the ones across from Pauline Johnson have traffic lights, and they still have those portable signs, and they've been there for, well, 6 months that I know of, if not longer. And I don't know why something like that isn't initiated out here, because it is dangerous. And we're just fortunate that we have not had serious accidents out this end.
David, are you able to respond to that in terms of the speed monitors?
Yeah, so I suspect we're talking about the digital speed boards.
Yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately on roadways with that type of geometric layout, well, it's like essentially 5 lanes, the boards have a difficult time actually deciphering traffic, and they don't work as well. What ends up happening is they end up picking up traffic going in different directions, and the speeds that are displayed aren't correct, and so it doesn't work very well at all. I think that, there's a couple of other options and things that we're working on within the city. We are working on a community safety zone assignment that will be coming to committee and council later this year. So community safety zones are areas that through data evaluation have been identified as areas of concern. So for example, in this case, speeding or collisions. And so you designate those areas as community safety zones, and the fines essentially are doubled within those areas. So that's something that we do have Colborne on our list to be studied and reviewed for consideration. The other area, and I know we talked about this at the last meeting, is automated speed enforcement. We are currently investigating automated speed enforcement. So essentially that's photo radar. You would have known of it previously. And so that's something we are looking into. It is a longer process to evaluate, and there is financial impacts with that. We did submit a sort of an update report to committee and council December, November, just sort of giving them an idea of what it sort of looks like. So that is something that we're also reviewing for a possible implementation in the future at some point.
Well, I know that part of the increase in speed that I'm noticing is with dump trucks, cement trucks, oil tankers, all just barreling through here between the construction and coming off 403. And even I followed a school bus that was going way over the speed limit. Just because there's no housing on one side of the street, I think is the biggest thing. They just think, oh, we're wide open and away we go.
Yeah, and one of the things you find with roadways like that, it's a wide roadway. Like I said, it's 5 lanes essentially. I suspect over time the volumes have dissipated as the 403 was built and that stopped becoming the main route. So you now have more from a motorist perspective. You don't have as much congestion, your comfort level has increased, and so people have a tendency to be more aggressive on roadways like that. As you're driving along that roadway, and as you mentioned, you don't have residential properties along the roadway, so you get the idea or feeling that you're not in the city, you're more on almost like a parkway or a higher level type roadway, and when you have those types of characteristics, people do have a tendency to go faster than they should be than the posted speed limit. So one of the things we will do is we will have staff go out and take a look at the existing signage that is out there, speed limit signs. And maybe there's some things we can do to enhance that, add some additional signs, just to help to raise awareness of what the actual speed limit is.
Well, the speed limit sign that was changed, is not, it's visible, but it's not, when the leaves come out and the weeds grow up, you're kind of around the bend when you're heading westbound coming in. But you talk about that being 5 lanes. It's 5 lanes by Pauline Johnson Collegiate too. And they have those traffic speeding signs. The whole road is 5 because 1 lane is turn lanes and the other 2 are traffic, or other 4.
Yeah, yeah. So clearly this is something that we need to pay some more attention to, both from an enforcement perspective, and we have seen some results there. So we can talk with traffic department again and with our police to see what other things we can do, or keep, find what was a quick success and keep moving on with it and not pulling it away. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Lou.
And David, didn't we not talk about pedestrians getting across from the Seniors Resource Center to James Avenue? Because the bus lets everybody off on the far side, and getting across that street is rather dangerous. We looked at maybe a possible a stoplight at that location, James and Coburn.
Yeah, when we met there the other month, that was one of the things we brought up. So that's something that we'll be looking into in more detail.
And some of that streetscape design, you're talking about Coburn Street there, that streetscape design where it becomes, because we've got a number of apartment buildings going up on that street, we'll have more commercial, and that will part of the streetscape design will be to close it in. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Mr. Gutierrez is already on the panelist screen. So Chris, if you want to go ahead with your question, then we'll get to a few others who haven't asked a question yet.
All right, no problem. I've made some notes and I'll try to be as brief as possible. David, thank you for your presentation. Amazing. I can see that you definitely picked up on some of the things we spoke about in September, and you're putting them, into good use. You've gone out and surveyed the area. It feels great. Just a couple things that I'd like to give as feedback. And was mentioned by, I can't remember if it was a counselor on the last meeting, but we did mention dropping Locks Road down to 40 kilometers an hour. It's currently at 50, but I think someone had mentioned that it may have been a police service as well, had mentioned that even though you drop the speed down, some drivers may still continue to travel at, 60 or 70 kilometers an hour. So also the 30 kilometers an hour, I've been down those streets before, and my car almost idles at 30 kilometers an hour, and I could probably go a little faster on a bicycle. But I don't have a problem making these changes or seeing these changes implemented, but they have to come with some enforcement. So what I witnessed on Johnson Road, which they did a great job with all the stop signs there and the speed bumps that are only unfortunately seasonal, was some police enforcement there. So one day when I was going down Johnson Road, there were two police officers on duty that were, either giving warnings or tickets for people going through those new stop signs. So the one thing I would like to see, because I don't think it's going to be effective to make all these changes unless we have enforcement initially. So we can assume maybe that a majority of the people that are using our roads are common commuters. They're using these roads on a regular basis. So perhaps that first ticket or that one warning will just be enough to bring that to their attention so that they don't turn left onto Glenwood when it says no left turn. So that's one thing I'd like to see is some enforcement with those changes. Another thing I heard you mention was that commuters are coming into town, from Mohawk via Locks Road, which is interesting to me because if people are coming from out of town using Locks Road to get into town, then to me that tells me that Locks Road is a fairly significant street, and so to have enforcement on that street and perhaps to consider a full-time speed dynamic sign on that street is something that I would recommend. I'll give you an example. If you drive into smaller towns like Paris or St. George, there's always a speed dynamic sign sitting there. It's on a trailer with a hitch. It hasn't moved in the past couple of years. I agree with you though, after about 30 to 60 days, the compliance probably weans a little bit. That's probably true. But I would like to see a permanent sign because I do feel that we all need some reminders. And once in a while, when I'm going over the speed limit and I see one of those signs, I do tend to ease up a little bit. So that would be another recommendation for Locks Road. Thank you for the four-way stop at Glenwood and Locks. There's too many car accidents, and well, unless you want to take down the big blue spruce tree, then we definitely have to put some stop signs there. It's too bad those speed dynamic signs don't come with any data tracking. I don't know if you talked to your vendor. Some of the research I did out in the companies in the US, they have speed dynamic signs that may also be able to collect data on every car that's passing through and recording, what speed they're doing, so that they can actually give that to the police force. And then they can see, what times of days and different days in the week where there's, serious offenses. And then they can actually send out those campaigns and do speed enforcement then. I did find, and thank you, Chief, for having one of your officers come knock on my door to ask if you could use my driveway for enforcement. He was here in the middle of the week and on a Saturday. Unfortunately, it rained for 3 days and there wasn't really a lot to catch, but hopefully it was just enough to send a message to a couple people.
Chris, can I just interrupt you for a second? Chief's got his hand up, so I think he wants to weigh in on some of what you've said.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Just with the enforcement, and I mentioned this in the September meeting, and I'll extend the offer again, David. I'm a huge fan of photo radar, especially if it's the mobile units, because I agree with you that you can lower the speeds to whatever. That enforcement piece is critical, but the most effective piece for enforcement is the photo radar units. You put a photo radar unit in a mobile, especially a mobile unit, we could pop that at different spots relatively easily. And the machine has no soul, I always tell people, because then you don't wind up in this, human interaction. You just get the fine in the mail. It's a pretty good wake up call. So anything that I can do as the police service to support photo radar, David, count us in.
Well, you could always say that we're working too hard. I mean, we have technology that's been around for years that we can use for red light cameras and for speed enforcement. We're just waiting for our lawmakers to pass the bills so we can get them installed. So as far as any other notes that I've made, one last thing would be the traffic light. I know, David, a lot of those four-way traffic lights, they have a traffic signal control box at the corner, right? Where you can actually go in there and manipulate the timing of the lights. Is that how they work?
That's correct.
Okay, so like, do you and your and those that work with you, do you study those once in a while to see if they're effective or not, or if they need to be tweaked?
Yeah, every year we do corridor reviews. So we usually come around to a corridor every 2 years. So we evaluate volumes within the corridor and adjust the signal timings as need be.
Right. Okay. So I would just, as a take back for you going forward, having the restrictions to turn left onto Glenwood when traveling northbound on Locks Road, not a bad idea. Again, if it doesn't come with enforcement, and I don't know how effective it will be. However, I can tell you from sitting out on the road for hours watching the lights, the reason why people are heading off down Glenwood, bypassing the Locks Road and Colburn intersection, is because the light just takes too long to turn green. So you may sit there for, say, 5 minutes before it triggers. In less than 2 minutes, I can make a left on Glenwood or a right on Glenwood and be out on Colburn, potentially causing more accidents because there's no traffic signals or stop signs to stop me from jetting out right into those 5 lanes of traffic. I can get out there in 2 minutes or less. So it would be possible as a takeaway to maybe tweak that green light so that when you get a couple cars coming up to it, it should trigger almost right away to get them on their way, because it is like Locks Road is that entry to the city as well. It's a huge commuter lane, and that light shouldn't be sitting there sitting red, because people are just going to get impatient and they're going to tear off through the side streets. So those are all the notes that I made. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you, Chris. Who do we have next, Maria?
Yep. Next, we're going to go to Lynn Aitchison. Go ahead, Lynn. You're still there?
Yep, thank you. Oops, sorry. I might be a little late because I apologize. I wasn't able to attend in September. But Beverly Road, although it's only a block long, is insane as far as how fast people drive down that road. Everybody that works at St. Joe's, well, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people that work at St. Joe's use Beverly to avoid the lights in the area. And I guess I'm more concerned about it now because the composition of the neighborhood is changing, and we have a lot of families with young children that have moved into the area, and it's just very concerning. With like, I don't know how people even get their cars up that fast that quickly, but they to the speed, but they do. So I wanted to bring that forward, and I apologize because you've done the report already. And then the other thing, similar to the lights the last gentleman had spoke of, the lights at Echo Place School are also a problem when the one light had gotten taken out in the summer and they replaced it with a temporary light. It was great because now you could actually push the button and it would change and you could get across the street. And I mean, I guess when I look at the comparison to, in order to get to Tim Hortons from PJ, that light changes in a matter of like seconds. And it's like, so if we can have it there, why couldn't we have it up further on Colburn as well so that it changes quicker? You know, just concerned kids when they're not using, like when it's not school time and they're not going to wait for that light to change because it just takes way too long. And it's also really annoying for people on Forest Road trying to turn left onto Colburn Street, waiting for that. So I don't know if that can be tweaked as well. And the light on the corner of Gretzky and Gray Street is also another one. It takes forever and it changes very quickly. If you're actually walking across the street on Gray Street, you don't have much time to get across before it changes back to red. So I just wanted to bring those ones forward. What is recommended in the report so far, though, I'm quite impressed with, and I like a lot of the recommendations. So thank you for the work done on that.
Thank you, Lynn. And I see David taking lots of notes. So their work is never done, even though a report is done. Nothing's ever complete. It's always a work in progress. Maria, any more?
Yes, sorry, slow to the mute button. Yes, we do have another one who has not asked a question yet, and then we do have some follow-up questions as well. It looks like we have some time to take them all. So we're going to go to Kyle Barry McLean. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hi, all. Thank you. So I just have a quick couple questions. The first question is if we can have an update on a status update on the speed humps on Johnson Road. I know the temporary ones were removed and we haven't had a survey or anything following the removal of those. And then the second is just to reiterate Chris's comments about enforcement. And, you know, I think we all agree that, you know, as you lower speed limits, enforcement is required. So I just wonder what council is doing to support the Brantford Police in either hiring additional traffic enforcement officers, or, you know, we can't just keep lowering speed because it just doesn't work in the end, right? So I just wondered what council is doing to support the police.
I see that I've got my mic off, so and Councillor Carpenter, you can add on. I think that we've been quite supportive in the past few years. Our new chief has some innovative ideas coming forward. And we recognize that traffic is a problem all over the city, but our police are dealing with some pretty significant issues right now. So even if we're hiring people specific, I don't know if they hire specifically for traffic, but if they are on traffic, they're being pulled to other things. These are, you know, highly trained sworn officers that we need in some of the more serious incidents or the higher crime index types of crimes. So we hear what you're saying, and I think this is why you hear the chief being so supportive of the photo radar and specifically mobile. Mm-hmm. You know, you have a car sitting in a neighborhood. I will say for myself, and I suspect we'll hear the same from a couple of the councillors on here that are supportive of the police. And as I said, there's some new ideas coming forward in terms of how we can have more boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I can speak to Johnson Road. I know David's going to as well, but those were temporary, and they will be moving to permanent ones shortly, David. But maybe you can update us on that because that was a trial error to see how it worked out, and it's worked out very well in that neighborhood. Kyle, I think you're pretty happy with those speed bumps that went in there with the stop signs. It's worked very well down there on Johnson Road.
It worked very well. It was interesting to watch. You know, I can see the stop sign at the corner of Hansford and Johnson from my house, and when the stop signs went in, and watching the officer sit on Hansford and barely get back to a stop position before making another enforcement, really just honed in on the fact that they were required, and enforcement is required in that type of situation. It's got a little bit lax recently, but as you said, Cheryl, the police have some bigger things that they're working on. That's why I was talking about, how can we provide more services to the police if it's an additional traffic enforcement officer specific to that. But yeah, it's hard if they're being pulled to other positions or other things that they're needed for.
Yeah, and maybe David could comment on those speed bumps and similar what's going to happen on Garden Ave, but and maybe Councillor Martin as Vice Chair of Police Service Board might update you on what we're looking at for policing.
Yeah, for Johnson Road, I know one of our technologists was working on the follow-up survey, so that if you haven't received it as of yet, I know it is going out shortly. And so of course that'll be soliciting feedback and support from the residents to essentially make those permanent. Just some other comments. Yeah, I mean, the speed limits reduction and the need for enforcement, that is something that municipalities and organizations across North America are dealing with. What we're finding, I sit on, I think I mentioned this before, I sit on a national road safety committee and provincial road safety committee. And I know that all the municipalities are dealing with these issues, and the pressures on the police are getting even more and more difficult for them to handle and to be able to really deal with the traffic side. So that's one of the reasons why the province has been bringing forward these automated enforcement tools for municipalities. I mean, we as municipalities were fighting for this for years, so they are coming forward. The legislation for ASE, automated speed enforcement, is in place. The previous location where I worked, I was operating the automated speed enforcement. It is a very successful tool. There is, you will see a reduction in speeds, and you will still see people just love the speed, and you continue to catch them. So those tools are there. I'd also say, one thing about the city of Brantford, the fact that we actually have a Vision Zero committee. Like I said, I've worked with people across all North America. I don't think there's any other municipality in North America that actually has a Vision Zero committee. So that's quite impressive, and that's a sign that shows the commitment of council towards roadway safety. That is really impressive. So.
Well, that's a great segue, because Councillor Martin not only is the Vice Chair of the Police Services Board, he's also the Chair of the Vision Zero Committee. So Councillor Martin, have you a comment, please?
Yeah, the council's been very supportive of the police for the last number of years. I know the police budget's gone up, 7 or 8% per year, when all other departments are coming in, between 1 and 2%. So the police have been treated very generously at budget time. And one of the things that's in the police budget for this year coming up is special constables. And what that'll allow us to do is have a dedicated force for patrolling the downtown. And that frees up the sworn officers that were on the beat patrol for the downtown. They were getting pulled out of the downtown on a regular basis anyway, but at least it frees them up so that other officers that are working traffic can stay on traffic instead of being pulled off to deal with some of the more serious issues. And yeah, the Vision Zero is something that we're proud of. And the biggest problem is waiting for the provincial legislation to allow these things to happen, and the processing. The red light cameras, and I think it's more so the speed enforcement, we can't set up that program yet because Toronto doesn't have the processes in place to deal with the volume of tickets. So they're waiting until they figure that out before they allow additional municipalities to join the program. So right now there's a hold on that whole thing. Otherwise, we might have that already in Brantford, because I know council has supported that kind of idea in the past. And one of the things we did at Vision Zero is corrected the way that staff were asking for that program. They wanted the full funding for it, even though it's cost recovery.
which makes it a harder sell at budget. So we said, well, put in what you need to implement it, and keep in mind that the rest of the costs will be covered by the revenue that's generated. And I think because it's been being restructured that way, it'll have a much easier time getting through the budget process with council. So I think that's as soon as we are able to, with the provincial allowing more municipalities into the program, we're going to be hopefully first in line to be one of the municipalities that joins that. So looking forward to that.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. So that means contact your MPP, Will Bowman, to say, let's get this moving.
And Maria, I have a message from our mayor, who is also an Echo Place resident, who wants to weigh in on this. He's got some information to provide as well. Are we able to move him to a panelist?
Yes. Is he under which name as an attendee?
One moment.
I can just send him. I can send him the link.
Sure, sure. Can you do that, please? And
meantime, we'll go to Nicole Francis.
Thank you.
While I do that, go ahead, Nicole. Oh, he's Nicole. Look at that. You're incognito.
Well, I can only go audio right now, but anyways, Nicole Francis is actually my personal assistant.
Ah.
He registered me, but I don't have. All we can do is connect through audio. But well, hang on.
No, you should be able to use your camera.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I was intending to attend, and I have been attending as a resident, not primarily as the mayor, because of course I do live on Glenwood Drive and I love my neighborhood, and I'm just as concerned about all my fellow neighbors about our neighborhood and making it better. But anyways, long and short is this. On the police budget, Councillor Martin's correct. Over the last 2 years, we've increased the police budget by 17%, about 8.5% per year. And we're now on a per capita population basis. For the 30 largest cities in Ontario, we're the second highest in terms of what we allocate and spend on policing. The great challenge with traffic enforcement is, as the chief has said on many occasions, the nature of crime in our city has become regional and much of it related to the drug industry. And because of that, there's a huge demand on police. And also when you have a sworn officer, constable, they're paid well in excess of $100,000 a year, and probably given everything they know and everything they can do, traffic enforcement is probably, in terms of their skill set, they're probably better assigned to other activities. And so what do you do to fill it in? It's the speed enforcement, and it's the speed cameras. That's really the long-term solution. This council, all the councillors that are here tonight, we've all been pushing hard for it. The province allowed it, basically permitted it about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Toronto was the city that really pushed hard. They did the pilot program. They've been doing it now for about a year, issuing tickets. And that's the key to the system, is issuing tickets. And you have to do it through the software that the city of Toronto has developed. And the system is full. We're hoping that with the assistance of the province, it'll be expanded to allow us in. But to get in, we have to create safety zones, a safety zone system, because you can only put cameras, speed enforcement cameras, in an officially designated safety zone. And the province has rules and regulations about that. And so that's what David was talking about. That's what we're doing this year now, creating determining where those safety zones should be in the city, and getting that done this year, so that when the door opens to bring more cities in through the speed control camera system, we've done everything we need to do to qualify for that. And it's a big priority for myself. I sit on the Zero Vision Traffic Committee. It's important. It's important to our community. It's important to every one of the councillors here. And lastly, I'd just like to thank Councillor Zantosky and Councillor Carpenter for arranging the second ward meeting for the benefit of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Who do we have next, Maria?
So next, we do have some follow-up questions. So we'll go to Deborah Jansing first. Deborah, go ahead.
Okay, so just to, here in Echo Place, I also want to echo great presentation, David. About the Forest Road, Forest and Sheffield Road, where it crosses, on one side it's Forest, the other side is Sheffield, where it crosses Coburn Street, there at Echo Place School. Yeah, that light is so long that sometimes if the crossing guard isn't there, because if the students are running late, they literally won't even push the light. They will run across because they know they're going to have to wait a long time for the light to change. So that's been like that for quite some time, that it takes a long time for that light to change, to be activated by pushing the button, or for a vehicle to rest there. That's why, yeah, they're taking those back roads. And as well, the island, if you're driving westbound and you're on the inside lane headed downtown on Coburn Street, that island almost extends almost right into the inside lane. And we've had so many accidents on this corner, and not accidents where necessarily police have been called, so they wouldn't be recorded, where people have lost tires, 1 or 2 tires on the left side of their car because they've had hit that island, because it almost protrudes a little bit too close to that lane just before the turning lane. Yeah, you'd know if you came and took a look at it. And one other question, I actually have a question for you, David, on Glenwood. You said you're going to have or you're proposing a one-way going eastbound. Where would that go between, like, where does it start? I understand it goes right to the end where Glenwood meets Coburn, but where would it begin on Glenwood?
Yeah, so essentially it's just at the intersection, and it probably, we'd have to look at it in terms of finalizing sort of the design, but I would take it back as far as I can. At minimum, it would be 20 meters, but if I can extend it even further, that would be more beneficial, because then that will deter those who think they can still turn down there. So
like as far as streetwise, right? Like I understand you would want it to be at least from Robinson, and then you were saying Echo Villa, and did you say Robinson?
Well, let me just pull it up here.
So it had Echo Villa, and I thought Robinson, but I was wondering how much farther, because the next one would be Forest Road after Echo Villa. No, Robinson, then Forest.
So this is what you're referring to, the
Yes.
directional closure?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would take it back probably up to wherever that first driveway is.
Oh, just west of Robinson.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
What we're trying to do, we obviously don't want to impact the residents, so we're trying to minimize the impact on the residents along there.
Yeah.
So we just want to close down the intersection to take away that cut through movement that's occurring.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary Lou. We're gonna go back. Oh, wait, sorry, that was Deborah, right? Thanks, Deborah. And now back to Mary Lou. Go ahead.
Oops, sorry, I didn't unmute myself. I wanted to speak to David about the bump out zones. I came from the Henderson neighborhood, and the only thing the bump out zone slowed down was the garbage trucks and the snow plows. And if you look at the posts that we always referred to that you tied your horse up to, they're constantly laying on their side from being hit. And I never noticed, I walked Queensway Drive all the time, and I never noticed any reduction in the speed.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things I've sort of talked about or was showing in my presentation, is where I'm looking more at sort of center island type bump outs rather than curb bump outs. And the reason for that is because that then does require the motorists to actually move positions and have to drive around sort of we'll call it the island. Whereas when you have bump outs, you can put bump outs in, but unless they're really properly designed, you still have a straight roadway. And so the motorist is still driving in a straight direction and doesn't have to adjust their driving style. So that's why we're sort of looking more at the center island type things.
Oh, okay.
The other thing too with this is, we're looking at quick wins and utilizing, knockdown sticks and paint that's easy to get in place. But the ultimate plan would be to go back to those locations and build proper infrastructure and things like that, so that you don't have those problems with the knockdown sticks. I know in my previous place that I worked, we used a lot of knockdown sticks and we had the same issue. It was a bit of a maintenance nightmare.
Something I noticed when I was going through one of the main cut throughs from the Hanlon in Guelph is at their their speed bump, they also have a speed limit lowered at the speed bump. It's 30 at all the speed bumps.
Yeah, I know a number of municipalities as part of their traffic calming programs, they reduce those roadways where they have physical measures down to 30 kilometers an hour. I'm a big proponent in speed limit reductions because of my Vision Zero work and the direct relation between speed and injuries. And as we've talked about, sort of promoting active living and kids being out and seniors getting out walking. So I am supportive, but I also am conscious and aware that motorists themselves, if you're going to reduce the speed limit to 30, you really need to make sure you're doing it in the right places and for the right reasons. One thing that I'm big on is school zones. So, over the years, what has happened is, used to be when you saw 40K, you knew you were in a school zone. But municipalities started to flood their roadways with 40K, and so that then got lost. So, here with our new policy, what we've essentially identified is that school zones and playgrounds can be 10 kilometers below the posted speed limit. So that's why you're seeing 30K. So trying to get back to that visual identification for motorists, that when they see that speed limit change by 10 kilometers an hour, they know they're either in a school zone or they know they're in a playground area.
That's good. Well, your plate is never going to be empty.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Is there anyone else, Maria?
Yep, just one more follow-up from Chris, and he's the last speaker.
Thank you. And then I'll have a comment before Councillor Carpenter moves on to the last section. Go ahead, Chris.
Actually, I apologize. I didn't realize it, but I clicked the raise hand.
All right, so we don't that was easy. At the risk of saying something controversial, I'm going to get back to kind of our community and working together as a community. We can change infrastructure, we can put in all kinds of signs, we can throw money at a whole bunch of things. The bottom line is it comes down to behavior, and most often when we're in our own neighborhoods, we're most comfortable with our own streets and we're speeding and rolling through our, so we, if we can all just pay attention to our own neighborhoods as well when we're driving around. We aren't, and I'm included in this, we're not that patient anymore. And we've heard conversation about waiting for lights and all of these things tonight. So I think that as much as we want to address some of these things that we can make better through infrastructure, we also have to, changing our behaviors free. And that's working together as a community. So at the risk of sounding preachy, and I'm included in this in terms of really needing to pay attention to my own behavior, I think that we all need to be mindful of that. So that's my little rant, and Councillor Carpenter, you're going to take it into the next section.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Antosky. And before we do that, I just want to thank the mayor for coming on. I know his schedule is very busy, and we're all adjusting to this COVID world and how we handle meetings and Zoom meetings. And I think we've been very successful at up to 70 people on this meeting and on the previous meeting. And I certainly want to thank the police chief, Chief Davis, for coming on, and his time is very valuable as well. And Hillary Miles, I appreciate the work you did on the stats. It's very helpful. And David, your style of looking at things from a different lens is really helpful. You've blown us away and some of the ideas that you have. Councillor Martin, as Vice Chair of the Police Services Board and as Chair of Vision Zero Committee, thank you for being here. And I know you're aware of all these things as a ward councillor. Mandy Samwell from the Eagle Place Neighborhood Association and Paul McDougall from the East Ward Echo Place. Thank you for being here. We're not done yet, but we're done this section of the meeting because when we put the notice out, it said from 5 till 8, so it worked out perfectly if it was from 6 till 8, but it's fine. And so we did cover a bigger area. Councillor Antosky and I delivered 3,000 flyers with the help of Paul and Cheryl. Maybe you might want to mention the others that helped you as well, just for the viewing public.
Yes, we had some residents. We had Miss Caven, and we had some students from Locks Road and from the Grand Valley Trail area who helped with this as well.
Okay, and we still have over 60 residents online. And I just, I know we've had a resolution recently talk about clerical services, but it may be that we're going to need to have these kinds of ward meetings. This is what it's going to look like in the future. It's been very successful, and I think it requires a lot of legwork on delivering the flyers, but it certainly has been successful in getting people out. So we covered a larger area than last time, so we left room in the meeting for any questions that pertain to anybody out there. And just remember that there's the process to be very respectful, and the questions don't expect an answer directly today, but your questions will be noted and we'll find an answer to you. So Maria, is there anybody that has any questions of us of anything else that's not been on the agenda?
There are a few raised hands, so
Okay.
I'm going to go to Bill Martin. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi. An issue I raised with both councillors after the last meeting, and is about this intersection of Gray Street and Wayne Gretzky. And I totally understand and agree with their explanation that until Wayne Gretzky goes through its reconstruction or whatever in the next couple of years, that's going to basically stay the way it is. Even though I guess because all the increased housing on the upper end, the traffic has become essentially much heavier. And the issue at that corner is I'm sure you all know the intersection, and it's not really straight through. And if you're coming up to Wayne Gretzky, wanting to make a right onto it, you could sit there for quite a while at times, especially the busier times of the day. And is there anything that can be done, maybe possibly to tweak that light? It is an exceptionally long light, I feel. And maybe if it's shortened, it can alleviate some of that problems until it's redesigned.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. We also looked at that we don't have a straight through and a right turn there because of the width, but that would have to be that's the part of the redesign in the future when it comes. But we're a long ways from that because the first section will be Henry Street to Linden Road, which will be tripling the lanes down there. But David will take a note on that light. Have a look at it.
I appreciate that. And one other thing for the chief, as much as I may regret it in the future, I totally agree with the red camera lights and the photo radar. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Maria?
We got that on record, Bill.
And so will I if I get caught.
Next, we're going to go to Peter Farrugia. Go ahead, Peter.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my my comment. First of all, to just say it was really good to hear this this meeting and the variety of issues that have been raised, and the tone very respectful and helpful. I have an announcement rather than a question. I'm part of a faith community in the ward that has developed a community fund. And so our church is called the Open Door. It's the old Free Methodist church that used to be on North Park Road, and we've moved to rent space from Friendship House, which does all kinds of good work in the community. And we've developed, this will be our 3rd year of running. We have a community fund, and we are inviting applications for projects from people in the ward up to a value of $2,000. So in our first couple of years, we had a couple of recipients, but they were larger organizations, the Stedman Hospice and Organized Chaos. Great organizations, but we're really hoping that individuals and small groups could maybe take advantage of this opportunity to pursue any kind of community initiative that it could range from something like improving a playground at a school to maybe organizing an arts after school group, whatever it is. So I guess the best thing is I can give my email if that's all right.
Peter, I would encourage you to reach out to Councillor Natosky and I with your email, and reach out to Paul McDougall from the Eastport Echo Place Neighborhood Association as well. You can go ahead and give it now if you wish.
Okay. So my email is P as in Peter, F as in Frank, ARR, UGIA at WLU.ca. And I'd love to talk to you, Paul. We've done some work with your organization before, and so we'd love to connect again and just promote this and hopefully get lots of applications with great projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, next we have a question from Craig Corcoran. Go ahead, Craig.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that. I was out for a walk the other day along Forest Road, and I heard a massive crack as I was walking. I looked over and I saw one of those massive trees fall and the destruction that followed. I was just wondering if there's anything can be done about the dead trees that are very, very noticeable, whether something can be done. I believe they're on private property, but something about the dead trees before somebody gets killed.
You talk about Forest Road, Craig. Are you talking about you're looking at the forest on the east side?
It's the area between Forest Road and Marvin Avenue.
Okay.
So in that section of those big, massive, like 100 some odd feet trees, there's numerous dead ones, and I know some neighbors are concerned because they asked me to come to this meeting and mention it to you guys.
Okay, so that looks like it may be on the city's property if it's part of the natural area, but we'll have can you send Cheryl and I an email after the meeting, and we'll make sure it gets over to Parks and Rec to have a look?
Yeah, I believe it's on private property, that area. The section between Forest Road and Marvin Avenue, I believe that's all private. Unless there's an easement back there I don't know about, but
if they're dead or decaying, it falls under bylaw. So we would still have forestry go out and check them out. If you can email us and try and give us a specific location to the one that you actually witnessed, and then they can look at the ones in the area as well.
So going about getting these emails, you said it's your first name, last. I'm not even sure what your names are, but sorry, it's my first ever city meeting.
Craig, I'll put up the contact information now, and then I'll put it up again at the end of the meeting. But I'll share so that you have it now.
Thank you so much.
This way anybody can do a screenshot or take a picture of the screen.
I appreciate it. I'm very impressed at how well this meeting has been run.
Thanks to you.
Thank you so much for that. I'll send them over an email with all the details.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I have to stop sharing so that I can get back into the participant list. Next in the queue, we have Kyle. again. Go ahead, Kyle.
Thanks again, all. Just wondering, this is kind of new, but and involves the county. If council and even Mayor Davis is aware of the proposed development on Colborne, where the flea market is, and how that will impact the city and the
Kyle,
surrounding residents.
I can speak to that. We've received several calls today, actually, on this, both Councillor Toski and I, and this is a development in the county. Kingsville is the county. The county's not a county. It's actually a city, just like we are, and it surrounds us. So any concerns you have with that, and there are lots, you put them in writing, and again, email them to either Councillor Toski and I, and we will send them to our planning staff, who again will relay them to the planning staff in the county, so that when that planning decision comes before county council, all those councils will have that information.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Forgive me, Richard, it sounded like you were closing off the meeting there by giving thanks to everyone. It made me nervous because I feel like we may have accidentally skipped past the community safety section of our meeting. When Chief Davis and I were going back and forth, he had mentioned someone was going to come on around 6 o'clock to speak about crime in the area. So I was hoping, since we have a little bit of time, that we could now speak of some of the concerns that the community has with safety and crime. So perhaps Chief Davis, if there was someone else that was to come on to the meeting to speak to my question that I had regarding the data that Hillary had rolled out.
Yeah, it was Sergeant Jackson. Unfortunately, she's not able to make it. I'd asked her to attend, but something's come up, so she's unable to be here. If you can, what's the best way for her to contact? If you want to flip your contact information to either of the counselors and they give it to me.
Yeah, I can send Richard and Cheryl an email, that's fine, and they can forward it on.
And I'll have her, it's Sergeant Amber Jackson. She can reach out to you directly and explain how the referral process.
Was she also in charge of the Citizens on Patrol program?
She had some involvement. It actually falls now. We restructured a bit last year.
Okay.
So now it falls under Inspector Kristen Bell Sampson's division, with a heavy part of it being involved with Staff Sergeant Chenny Van.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I hope people in the community that are on this call can chime in a little bit, because I'm very, very concerned about the crime in this city. Since the opioid crisis kind of hit North America, I guess you can say in general, I really saw Brantford change, especially the downtown. So a big thank you to Mayor Kevin Davis. I deliver for Canada Post and Amazon on a part-time basis all around Brant County and downtown Brantford. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And once you brought in the private security, I could already feel a difference. I have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. I take them down to Harmony Square. We go for skates. We go for treats and coffee. I love going downtown. I love to see more restaurants. You know, it's the heart of our city. So it really broke my heart back in the spring when I saw 4 or 5 homeless, drug-addicted people pushing shopping carts up and down Colborne and Dalhousie. So thank you very much for doing that, because when I go down there, the presence of those officers really help. That being said, I would also like to see that type of private enforcement like we do at the Fresco Plaza near West Brant. And the motels on Colborne Street are a thorn in our backside in this community. They really, and I don't really see a lot that's changed regarding that. Have we implemented or enforced those owners to have 24-hour surveillance? Do we have 24-hour special constables that we can hire to monitor those locations? Because the behavior and the activity that's taking place, the prostitution, the drugs, the drug dealings, those motels are vibrating all through the night. I've had it, like I mentioned to Chief Davis back in September, about me having incidences directly with the members of Brantford Police, and they're now starting to push me back. when you look at the data that Hillary rolled out, the 370 suspicious calls on average for the 2020 year and the 2021 year, I think those are really concerning, because we have to remember that when I see a suspicious person walking down Locks Road and I call into dispatch, the police show up, but as soon as they leave, that person continues on with their poor behavior, and that may be breaking into a car or walking into someone's home while they're actually there watching television, or doing all sorts of bad behavior. So what I would like to see, and this also speaks to down on Colburn Street West, I think, Mr. Mayor, there was a proposal to have, was it either low-income housing down in that area? If we're going to have these low-income housing areas, I don't have an issue with it. And like I've said before, I don't have a problem with the motels on Colburn Street. It's just the behavior that's coming out of them that I'm concerned about. You know, I think there's people that really need help. They're drug addicted, they're homeless, and we need to help them. They need help. And if we have to spend a little extra money to get them the help they need, then we really need to, you know, go after that problem, because the opioids are so addictive, and they're really they're turning our community upside down as far as I'm concerned. So what I would like to see is some private surveillance invested into those motels and any other area that may be supported with low-income housing.
Thanks, Chris. And those are all good points. And I want to update you, Councillor Antosky and I, and approved by council, in our official plan, we upscaled the zoning of all those hotels so that they can be apartment buildings, 6-story apartment buildings, or condominiums. So they have a higher value as opposed to hotels. We've also brought in a hotel bylaw that was approved by council that requires those hotels to pass certain guidelines, fire safety, registration of who's in them. I know that doesn't do everything, but it's a sort of a step in the right direction. And council's even approved along those hotels what they call brownfield sites, to include them as redevelopment sites for possible grants, for tax grants, where the city that actually just gives a portion of the taxes back, increased taxes, so it doesn't cost taxpayer anything, and to encourage redevelopment of those sites. And that's one of the steps. The other step that you talked about was a piece of mental health and addiction services, and we really need the province to step up here and provide more funding for mental addiction and mental health services. They are sorely lacking all over the province, and every city's experiencing this. And thank you for your comments. The mayor's taken it personal upon himself. I'm on the downtown, making sure downtown's safe. In fact, he's stepped away from the police services board to go on the committee for downtown to make sure this happens. And all these issues that you're talking about, they fall on either our hospital services or our police services, where they really don't belong. They belong in mental health and addiction. And every dollar spent in mental health and addiction is a dollar saved at police and hospitals. So, and we need that to be recognized right across the province. But, you know, so all your points are all well taken, Chris, and I really appreciate how involved you get in your community. The people of Locks Road are lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter said everything I was prepared to say.
I'll say one thing, Chris. The thing about private security is, and you know, the chief and I have had this conversation several times, but we have about 30 properties downtown. I say we, I mean the city of Brantford. And so the private security, their only authority comes from that they're the city security. So their authority only really extends and is over the properties that we own downtown, like Harmony Square and the parking garage, and then the various housing developments we have in areas just slightly outside the downtown. So it would not be possible for us as a city to provide private security to private properties. But part of what they do downtown is, as they're moving between properties, they're another set of eyes downtown. They get to know many of the people that live and work in the downtown, and they provide another set of eyes for the police. And yeah, I wish we could do that, but I think it really comes down to, when we're dealing with properties other than those owned by the city, it's some people provide their own security, some businesses, or it's the police and the services they provide. But I think Councillor Carpenter is quite right. The longer term solution, and you know, I live in the same neighborhood, and I woke up Boxing Day to find my car broken into and one of my windows smashed in. Not a great way to end Christmas, but we know in our neighborhood that, and it's not exclusive to our neighborhood. It's a scourge through our city. These people that go through and rob from vehicles. And actually, I had one in my garage that tried to take one of my bikes. But I'll say this: he didn't leave my garage with my bike. But it's really comes down to each of us also have to do what we can do. And I now have my own surveillance system in my own home and whatnot. But it's in terms of the drug issue, it's a really important initiative was the health unit appointing someone to help coordinate the community drug strategy. Because we have a number of different organizations like St. Leonard's, some of the work the city does, some of the work the hospital does. A lot of different organizations are doing different things in respect to dealing with the drug issue in our community, police included. And it really needs to be better coordinated. And the health unit has stepped up. They've allocated about $100,000 in their budget for a person who's helping to coordinate it. And there was recently a drug forum in November that was sponsored by the health unit. I attended, representatives from different organizations. There are about 30, 40 people that attended that work in this problem and deal with it every day. And so there are a number of great ideas coming out of that we hope will give us a better strategy to deal with this issue. But yeah, it's a tough one and there's no easy solutions. It does require the province to make a major investment because they're responsible for healthcare, including mental health. But they are beginning to step up, and there's some, from what I'm seeing from the province, are going to be allocating some very significant money to punching out and expanding the rehab system. And I've been working hard behind the scenes with Will Bowman to make sure that our community, and working with St. Leonard's, that we get our fair piece of that. So a really huge, complicated problem. We all live with the consequences, me included. And, it's discouraging, but I like to think that if we continue to work away at it, and there's a role for each of us, that we'll end up, I'm hoping, in the hopefully not too distant future with a community that is plagued less by these kinds of issues. But it keeps me up at night. What more can we do as a city? And not just me, not just the councillors, not just the city, but the larger community. And there's a lot I could go on for what happened there talking about, but thanks for your question. It's really important. It's important in particular in our neighborhood too.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I was just looking, I realized the answer is the province. We're waiting on the province. We're waiting on the province for funding. I was just looking for something in the middle for now, just like a Band-Aid, just, a little private security. It's working so well downtown. I just figured why not implement that into the low income areas that are wreaking havoc in our neighborhood. That's all.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. And I can add to the mayor's comments too. The province has recognized, the LINs that we were part of, that used to be part of the Hamilton and the Lynn area. So Hamilton being the largest partner seemed to get most of the attention. The province is restructuring all that, and we are creating a so it's Brantford, Ontario Health Team. So we're creating that. So it'll be a made in Brantford Brant solutions going forward. And we're going to pick up Haldeman. But that mental health and addiction is on the top of their list. And most of our organizations in this community work well together to start with. So it's easy for that team to get rolling. And they've already started rolling. So you're going to see a more Brantford Brant focus from the province funding to the health teams in the community too, to deal with things the mayor talked about. Thanks, Chris.
Great.
Yeah, the other thing, Chris, that we're trying to do is, and Paul, you'd be interested in this. And we have a great system of neighborhood associations and community centers. And we're trying to reorganize our social services department. We brought the recreation department into social services. And so the idea is that the community programming that takes place at community centers, at various schools, some of them we rent and lease, through our neighborhood associations, through a lot of great groups and organizations we have in this community, trying to bring them together and do more through that system at the community neighborhood level. And, whether that's programs like helping single mothers or helping single mothers raising their children, whether it's providing different kinds of opportunities, healthy opportunities for youth, whether it's helping in respect to the local security, the citizens on patrol, that sort of thing. You know, our CAO, our new CAO recognizes he came from Niagara, and they've done a pretty good job of that in Niagara. And so we're trying to take that model and do more at the community level, where many of the solutions for individual neighborhoods can be found. So it's actually kind of exciting, but you can see that it's a lot of different things. We can't just sit back and say, you know, province, give this, you got to do this. That's important because they provide the funding for that core mental health rehab. City doesn't have the ability to fund that, but there's other things we can do. May not see a difference tomorrow or next year, but I'm confident over 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it'll start making an impact and making our community much better and stronger.
And just briefly, I think what we're hearing is there's a real desire, and this is played out through these 2 meetings, again, how much this neighborhood wants to work together. There's a desire of what can we do to help? And so I think we need to go away and really maybe talk to the chief, for instance, about how can we put together a SEPTED plan to give to the neighbors to say, here's what you can do to kind of safeguard your own place. What kind of activities can you do? What can you be involved with? And we can talk with our neighborhood associations, with the chief, et cetera. And maybe that's our next step, is to come back in terms of what's, you know, as the mayor says, we can't wait for the province to do everything, but what can we start doing to make some changes locally, and in this case specifically for Echo Place.
Okay, Maria, who have we got next?
We have 2 more raised hands. We're going to go to Jean next. Pinchero, go ahead, Jean.
Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, Jean. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess my question's for both Richard and Cheryl. Do you know if there's going to be any further development in Echo Park, the little park at the base of Hamilton and Cumberland Street? When the initial the meeting with the developer in the city, we were in attendance, and they said they were going to put lighted lights on the pathway through the park with new playground equipment, et cetera, but they haven't really done anything except drop a pathway across the park.
Yeah, they did the pathway, Gene, now, and there will be another path out to Gray Street as well, because we want the access to Gray Street. We kept one of those lots open to Gray Street for access through there. And yeah, that further work will be coming in the spring.
So there will be some lighting coming in there, will there?
There'll be some lighting, and there will be some another pathway out, and that'll be cleaned up. And it has to be leveled out too there. Right now, it's not, the developer's not finished on Gray Street, so the leveling of the land beside that will be done as well, the grading.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. You folks are doing a great job with these meetings, by the way. So,
well, thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Keep them up and have a good evening.
Thanks, Jean. So we have one more, Kevin Blair. Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, thank you very much.
Oops. Let me do that again. Are you there, Kevin?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Again, thank you, councilors, for letting me have an opportunity to speak this evening. Being a resident of Grand Valley Trails and fortunate enough to back onto the rail trail, a couple of questions. Are we doing anything? Is there a plan in order to slow down the speeding of motorcycles, ATVs, and snowmobiles that come bombing down the back here at in the middle of the night or even during the day? And there's been a few incidents where some of my my neighborhood here were out walking on the trails and have almost been, well, not even knocked over, almost killed.
Yes, Kevin, and you're talking, and I know there was an incident with a snowmobiler and a resident that almost got almost got hit in the head with the helmet from the person on the snowmobile. I know there was a altercation that happened on that location, and my understanding is that piece of the trail is in the county. Okay, it backs right on the, but we'll have to have a look at that in further detail to make sure. But it doesn't have any lights, and it's part of the trail that goes all the way to Hamilton.
That's correct.
That's the one
Yeah.
I think you're thinking of. Okay, yes.
Yeah, okay. And I appreciate that. My other question, and again, I'm not going to harp on the apartment development that's happening on Colborne, but question to you in regards to, you made a comment that the two specific motels on Colborne with the other resident that mentioned that you had, is there a proposal, or there is a proposal, or it's been approved for rezoning?
No, when we did our official plan, we upscaled the zoning on those motels so that they can actually be
redeveloped
condominiums, multifamily, small apartment buildings to encourage the redevelopment to move away from the motels.
Okay, and is that something that's going to continue from the proposed development that the County of Brant's looking at right now on Colborne? Will that continue west on Colborne Street?
No, once we get, we don't have any input on the county's zoning other than comments that we can share with them, and then their councilors make up that decision. So I don't know the exact zoning once it hits Kingsville, but I think it's worth us having a look at.
Okay, because I know one of the comment on the meeting on Tuesday afternoon, or actually Tuesday evening that I was a part of, since I was given notification of this proposed change, was the issue with storm drain access having to be tied in with the city of Brantford, and they're looking at potentially any overflow being dumped into the trail.
Well, we'll have to look into that. They'll have to have a conversation with us about that. There isn't any such agreement that I'm aware of, and I'm speaking with those individuals earlier today. But from our side, Kevin and I wasn't given any information like that. But Cheryl and I will follow up on that. I'll follow up on that by sending an email tomorrow about that. We want to know, but we'll be part of looking into that development. That we're going to our planning staff are sending those concerns forward to the planning staff in the county, but they'll also make us aware when that meeting is, so Councilor Tosk and we can attend that meeting.
Okay, well, no, and that's great. I appreciate that. And again, coming around full circle, the other reason why I mentioned the rail trail specifically and the speeding was that part of the development with that proposed complex is they're looking to have access to the rail trail from the conservation department. And that's just going to increase the amount of people on that trail potentially twofold.
Yeah, we'll have to take a closer look at that. We haven't, you have access to the rail trail from your development.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and I don't know if we can have a say in whether they have access to that rail trail as well. But
oh, no. And my concern isn't the access, Councillor. My concern is my first point about the speeding with the motorcycles, ATVs, and the skidoos. We're introducing a significant amount of new people to that trail, and we're going to see a lot more pedestrian traffic on that trail, where we could potentially run into more serious.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the trail needs more bollards on it, like we have in some of our other trails, where bicycles can access around the bollards, but not so much motorcycles, and certainly not skidoos.
Yeah, and actually that's a great point, because I know it's pretty much a straight shot almost into town where it ends from where we are. So I don't think there's any other types of restrictions on the trail.
And I did note the mayor was making notes too, so we'll all follow up. Yes, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, great job. Appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thanks for participating, Kevin. We've got Chris again, or no, I think he lowered his hand. No, there it is again. Okay, here we go, Chris.
Sorry, I just want to quickly add to those trails because I'm on Locks Road. I was under the impression it's illegal to have an all-terrain vehicle traveling down the trail that goes to Hamilton or in the other direction of Paris. Is that not true?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, so we would, if it's part of the county, then we would need to contact the OPP to let them know that there's a lot of activity. I mean, since the pandemic, a lot of crazy stuff has happened, and I do go down there and walk the trails with the kids. There is snowmobiles and ATVs and dirt bikes on a frequent basis down there. So to my knowledge, they're not even allowed to be down there. So I would just end by saying someone needs to contact the OPP to bring that to their attention if someone hasn't already.
And
Thank
Chris, you noticed that to the access trails through beach as well?
Oh, absolutely. I walk right down Beach Road, just past the old mill that's down there.
Yep.
Along the river. There's lots of little pathways that the residents have made to walk their dogs, and there's a little pond down there to do some ice skating. So, well, I shouldn't have said anything, but that's our secret hockey place, by the way. Anyway, as far as all-terrain vehicles are concerned, they are rampant. I agree with that previous citizen that that needs to be brought to the attention to the police for some enforcement.
Yeah, we'll make a note of it. Thanks. And thanks for participating again, Chris.
No worries.
So we have one more, Roxanne. Go ahead, Roxanne.
Hello, Roxanne.
Hi, it's Ed and Roxanne, and we just have concerns as well about the trail. We're in Grand Valley and our property backs up onto it as well. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I just kind of want to reiterate and just, I know you guys are working on this and talking about this, but we've been long-term residents here. We were one of the first houses in the development. And we have noticed that the problems of the motor vehicles, and we're talking, dirt bikes, snowmobiles have been bad in the past. And we do recall the incident. It was a friend and neighbor of ours that incident on the trail happened. And it is 100% correct that there are supposed to be no motorized vehicles on that. And it's a safety issue. It's a noise issue. And we actually have gone to the OPP. And we've been directed by the OPP to come to the city. And then the city has directed us to the OPP. And back and forth we've gone. And, when I mean back and forth, I mean this has been going on for many years, probably 7 to 8 years for us. And, we enjoy that trail as a family and as a community. And so I like the fact that fellow community members have talked about that. But it seems that every time we bring this up, this issue is not resolved, or we don't hear about any resolution that's being proposed for it. And just another question that my wife and I have: we live in the rail on the rail trail itself, and we live off Barrett, and we have a concern about Barrett with the parking on both sides of the road. You can't get a snowplow through our neighborhood. Garbage trucks, fear for the safety of the garbage trucks or anybody that's going in between cars. There's been issues about school buses not coming down anymore. They used to come down through the neighborhood, and now they actually come off Johnson. So I was wondering if you guys have ever thought about coming into the neighborhood and seeing how hard it is to maneuver one single vehicle, let alone a snowplow or a garbage truck through Barrett, Johnson, Hanson, or Stevenson.
Well, I'll let the chief respond to the policing.
Yeah, so I won't get into the parking and the navigating of that, but to comment about the OPP sending you to the city and BPS sending you to the OPP, leave that with me. The OPP have a new detachment commander, Ange Ferguson. I've known Ange for many, many years, and quite often when we wind up in these areas that are on the edge of our jurisdictions, you wind up with maybe a case of neither of us are really clear where those lines are. So let Ange and I sort this one out from the leadership perspective, and then we can pass it on to our respective troops as to whose responsibility it is to take care of it. The caveat being, it boils down to resources, whether it's us or the OPP. We're, the issues we're feeling in the city, they're feeling in the county, and so we can do what we can. In the summer, we have a bit of an advantage because we have the park patrollers that we hire. We give them special constable status. They're the ones you'll see out on the dirt bikes and on the pedal bikes. They're on the trails a lot. Unfortunately, they're students, and so we typically lose them after September. But let me talk to Inspector Ferguson, and her and I can sort out whose area this is, and we can look into it more.
And once we do that, maybe David Ferguson, we could look at possible bollards that could be put on that pathway so bicycles can maintain it easily, but motorized vehicles not so much. That we do that in other areas, so we'll look at that. To answer your question about traffic on both sides, I get that, and we drive down there quite a bit. I actually was down there today because there was another issue, and usually when there's an issue in that area, I'll spend an hour and drive all through the area just to check things over. We can survey the area for parking on one side or the other, or for the 1st to 15th kind of model. Generally, when you remove parking, what ends up happening is people drive faster, so that's the downside of that. When you have the congestion, you also people drive slower. But I guess I get your point. It's difficult in the with the snowplow. You get big rifts on the sides. So we can look at that by sending in a survey around and see what people want to do with parking in that particular area. Well, I got you. Can I ask you a question? That's one of the first areas we did the bump outs. What did you think about those bump outs?
Oh, yeah, our friends.
Are we on? Can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, actually, on most of our neighbors that we talked to, actually, we like them.
Okay.
We did notice that they did reduce the speed because if you come down, as you know, if you come down Barrett seems to be one of the longest roads, and you can increase your speed pretty quickly down there. And there's a lot of families, a lot of kids like to play the basketball along the side of the road. So we've noticed that it has done a great deal of decreasing and reducing the speed there. We were for them. We know some people that were opposed to that. I think they're a great idea. It's just like you in the earlier conversations that my wife and I heard you talk about. We love the speed bumps that you have on Johnson Road, because Johnson Road seems to be a throughway through Garden Avenue, Colburn, so people don't have to come up and around. It's a quick pass, but you've reduced speed there a lot, which is actually really appreciated, especially now that the development on the other side of Johnson has grown and there's access to 2 parks, our park and the rail trail. And then there's another park across. So you've helped with safety issues there and speed at the same time, which we like. So to answer that quickly, we thought they were good.
Okay, and one more question for you. I know I'm asking you a question now, but Hansford, when at Barrett going to Johnson Park, there's no stop sign there or no safe egress across the street. What do you think about that? Do you think that's be one of the areas we do one of our POXs?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not safe to
not
cross.
safe to cross there at all. It's not safe to cross Johnson Road to the park there. You know, the best thing that you guys did was, I believe in that, is putting the 3-way stops. People used to blur through there, and before that, you put the stoplights there. There was a fatal accident there at that corner of Johnson and Garden a few years ago involving a bus and an individual in a truck. So those are helping a lot in this community, because this area of the community has grown a lot on both sides.
Yeah, and the new subdivision next to Belansky Way, and that they have a walkway access down to Johnson Road, and then that access them to the park, and vis-a-vis the park they're going to build up there will be access for the people from your subdivision as well.
That's right. So there is no really safe way of crossing there. The sidewalk ends at a certain portion. And then you have to, look both ways. And with the speed bumps gone, even in these conditions of the weather, people still seem to speed up coming off Garden onto that first stop sign there.
Yeah, the speed bumps are coming back permanently as long as the residents agree, and I think that will be positive. And what happened with this area, Mr. Cabral, was this whole area was supposed to be industrial, and it got converted to residential many years ago. And Cheryl and I have been trying to work to make it one cohesive residential neighborhood, which hasn't been easy, right on the boundary of industrial area. And we've been working with your help. We've been getting it to work pretty good, actually. So thank you for your comments on that.
You guys are doing a great job on that portion. In the future, hopefully we'll have a chance to discuss about that new development coming across, because there are lots of concerns about that. But in this portion, we were one of the first houses here, so we've seen how it's grown in a very positive manner. So thank you.
I think I've been to your house.
Yeah, absolutely. We have. We've talked to both counselors.
Okay.
You're great to talk to, and you listen to our voices, which is very important as counselors.
Thank you. Maria, do we have anybody else? Thank you.
Yep, we have a couple of first-time speakers, so we'll go to Ruby next. Go ahead, Ruby.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. First of all, I would like to thank Councillor Carpenter and Councillor Antosky for your great work you have been doing in this area. Just a moment ago, someone from my neighborhood was talking to you and also appreciating the same way. And he was absolutely right. We have seen a great progress in this area, which was much needed as well. And as far as that bump is concerned, initially, I would say, yes, it was a good idea, but it was such a high bump. Maybe it was just a temporary one. This is why that I could see, like I could go on pretty much speed 0, but I could see other people behind me were looking at me and thinking, what are you doing? It was, so the cars which have not a very high bottom, that they can easily hit on that bump. Now talking about, they also pointed out, the person before me has also pointed out about the walkway, which is coming from the new subdivision, and it's right by the park. It is very important, if possible, to increase that sidewalk to join with the, like there is a, I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, there is a gap, right? That should be joined, because I have noticed, because I drive there every day, come back and forth, right, from work. So I have noticed people normally, especially during summer months, I've noticed they stop and they look both sides, and sometimes children don't, and they like to cross the road quickly. So if that sidewalk goes all the way and joins with the one which is going to the stop sign, because now we have that 3-way stop sign as well, I believe then public will start using it. So then even if we have a speed bump or not, it may or may not make a difference. I'm just wondering if having, instead of a high speed bump, if we can have something else there or a speed limit there, maybe that would help. But again, I hear that you are going to send a survey out. Let's see what everybody says, and then that would be the route to go. But another thing, I would like to thank both of you for sending out that those flyers. And honestly, that's how I got into it. I never knew we are having this kind of meetings where we can discuss things about the community. Wonderful feedback from everybody, starting from police, starting from the person, everyone from the city, whoever spoke, gave great information. Thank you very much. And special thanks to the mayor, who found the time to come out and join us as well. Thank you.
And you know, we are in this year's capital budget, we have the neighborhood association there has asked for an ice rink, and so a water valve is going to be placed in that area of the Johnson Park. And I know that some of your neighbors have also asked for a gazebo, a small gazebo, just so that the residents could, when their children are playing in the playground, they could stay in the shade. The trees aren't big yet there, but that isn't in the budget yet. We'll look at that. We've been looking at that. We'll find some extra money, but the other way that park access goes right to almost the access to the new development. And we may have to look at a POX on that location, because that's where they're going to cross the street directly into the other subdivision. And especially if the ice rink gets in there, we'll be having kids from the new subdivision coming to this subdivision down that pathway. So thank you, Ruby.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ruby. Glenda, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. Just want to reiterate on the last 2 callers with the crosswalks. We live on Davidson, so yes, traffic is huge on Johnson, and with the new subdivision in Belansky, a lot of kids, a lot of families that are crossing, and so yeah, the sidewalk that's going into the new subdivision kind of just cuts off and goes nowhere. And it's kind of in a really odd place, and that's where they cross, because then they catch the sidewalk that goes along the stream at the back of the park. So that needs to be looked at, because that is dangerous, especially at night when it's a little bit darker and stuff, and the kids. My other question is, and I think I had mailed it in, is there anything in the budgets to maybe put some lighting in regards to community safety for the paths that go between the different surveys? A lot of people walk their dogs, a lot of the kids play. So from Davidson to
Bolster.
Bolster that way. It's quite dark. There is the small forest path that goes on to Pace as well. It just is just something to maybe, I know it all comes down to money and budgetary stuff, but that'd be kind of nice, especially in the summertime.
Yeah, Glenda, the hope is for Cheryl and I, when this the development's finished, and it's almost complete now, when it's complete, that then the Andy Woodburn Park will be connected to all the other parks in the area, and the trails will all be one complete connection. And that will connect to Johnson Park as well. And we can talk about lighting at that time, but we certainly want to make sure the access point to Johnson Road into the sidewalk is done, and safe access to Johnson Park from that residential neighborhood. So all three parks will then be connected vis-a-vis the trail system that goes through the woods there as
Yeah,
well.
that'd be amazing, because yeah, it's well used. Like this last summer, it was all of them were well used, and it's really nice to hear about the ice rink as well.
Yeah, it's basically three neighborhoods that we're trying to, before actually counting Mission, we're trying to actually make one complete neighborhood is the goal.
Yes, because it would be straight through, right? So it's all there. Awesome. Thank you very much for the invite for the meeting today too.
Thank you, Glenda.
Okay, a couple more. We're going to go to another first-time speaker, Samara. Go ahead, Samara.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. I apologize. I am a few minutes late to the call, and I think this was brought up and you had asked for questions to be emailed to you. But I think a big concern for us is with that new development going on, as city councilors, ensuring that, you know, the consultation has been done or will be done with the Six Nations to ensure that we don't run into land challenges and disputes. And there's a lot of things tied into that, but I just want to make sure that that's at the forefront in terms of any advocacy work that you're doing, that the proper consultation has been done, because there's a lot of implications with the new development that a lot of us feel pretty strongly about. And I want to make sure that that's something that is at the forefront of a big concern for you.
You're talking about the new development in the county and Cairnsville.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you. We will make sure that gets forwarded on.
Okay. Next, Kyle, with a follow-up question. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yes, thank you. The reason I raised my hand was Richard brought up the corner of Hansford and Barrett and the crosswalk to Johnson Park. And a few years ago, in February, so 2 years ago, this coming February, we all met at Woodman Community Center, and that's how we ended up with the stop signs along Johnson Road and the speed humps. And we talked about that, and Rob Smith was involved, and there was a traffic study done. And I was just trying to find the emails where Rob confirmed that the traffic study at the corner of Hansford and Barrett didn't warrant a three-way stop sign at that point, even though there's safety concerns with kids crossing the streets to get to the park. And I was trying to locate the emails, but the traffic study was done during the day, during the week when kids were in school. Unfortunately, kids don't play at the park while they're in school. So I don't know if that's something that we should be looking at and doing proper traffic studies at an appropriate time when we're talking about safety and in the involvement of children trying to cross streets.
Yeah, there is a process and there's a newer one, Kyle, for doing the warrant studies for whether stop signs are needed. Those stop signs were put in by Councillor Antosky and I by resolution in the support of council. Now, they weren't recommended by staff, and that's their job, is to follow a process. And we knew that they were needed and the residents wanted them, so we moved them to go forward, and that's why they're there. So we appreciate any help there. And I think you're talking about Hansford and Johnson Road, though, instead of Hansford and Barrett, right?
Well, Hansford and Barrett is where we were talking earlier, a couple of callers ago, about putting a stop sign in, because people crossing the street into the park don't have a safe means to cross the street because of traffic. Unfortunately, the traffic study that determined that it didn't warrant a stop sign was done at a time when no one's crossing the street.
Yeah, that's why we're looking, Kyle, looking at those POX. Is that what they're called, Cheryl? The short form POX.
PXO, pedestrian crossover.
PXO, sorry, PXOs, which are the, they're lined and they're, when pedestrians get to the road, the traffic has to stop. And I know that's gonna take some used to. We just did one on Brentwood Park Road in Ward 4. And David will tell you that we've done a number of them in the city, and it's gonna take the residents some getting used to, but we'd like to try that first.
Mm-hmm.
And if that works, then there won't be a need for a stop sign there, but that's sort of the direction that we're going with that location.
Great idea. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Well,
Okay,
Maria,
if there's time, there is, oh, actually, no, she just lowered it. So we don't have any other raised hands in the queue right now.
okay, closing remarks, I'll say a few and then Cheryl will, and I'll certainly invite the mayor and Vice Chair Martin to say a few words, and Paul, if you wish. Just want to thank everyone for attending. I think we still got 48 online or 40 online, and I don't know how many are actually watching live. But we really appreciate the format and your involvement, and to let you know that the city is very supportive of listening to your concerns. That you can see by the mayor being here and by the Vice Chair of the Police Services Board and the Police Chief himself staying for the whole meeting. Thank you, Chief. And Paul McDougall is representing the Neighborhood Association. There's a lot of people working on your behalf, so we are listening and we are responding. I know it sometimes seems not as quick as you wish, but the process of government does move slow. And even as the mayor said, it's going to take some time for us to see the results of what we're doing downtown. But the results are on the right way. We're on the right path, just it moves slower. So I just want to thank you for your all kind remarks and your patience with us this evening. And I apologize for the extra long agenda, but it seems like we used it all. And I really appreciate everything that you've done. Cheryl?
Thanks, Richard. I echo your gratitude for everyone's patience and really just willingness to work as a community. These meetings take a village to run, and Maria, thanks for keeping us all organized tonight. And there's a number of people and clerks behind the scenes before we got here tonight that were involved, and we've got Norris that's making sure that all our IT stuff works. It really does take a village, and so we are very grateful for all the support we've received. We've got a fantastic staff. And, all the work that the residents are doing for their neighborhood, there will be positive results. And we will go back and look at things that can be tangible in terms of what you can put your hands on, and we'll come back and say, who wants to try these things? And it'll involve, the citizens on patrol, or maybe a septet or a barbecue, and we can have a barbecue. So thank you, everyone. Please continue to communicate with us. Let us know what we need to address. And thank you to everybody else, the chief, everybody that's been part of this. This has been really, really helpful. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, did you have any comments?
Well, I will never let an opportunity pass without saying anything. But first, I very much want to thank, as I did previously, you Councillor Carpenter, and you Councillor Antosky, and the city staff have helped support this. I used to be a North Ender, with all due respect to the councillors who from Ward 3, Councillor Martin, and I moved down into Echo Place. That's been about 12 years now, and I love our neighborhood here in Echo Place. It's really unique, and it's varied, and it's got lots of character. And I think we've seen tonight that it's not just the being located to the river that makes us such a great neighborhood, and our uniqueness, and the fact that it's not cookie cutter subdivisions here. We're all a bit different and varied, but it's the engaged citizens that help us overcome these problems. Not an attitude of let somebody else take care of it, but being engaged is essential. And I live on one of the condos that backs into the ravine on Glenwood. And, I'm even seeing in our little unit, our neighborhood of 31, we're trying to deal with safety issues, and we're coming together and doing various things in our little neighborhood to, help the police and help make our community safer. And that's just, that's an example of what's happening across the city, that we're stronger as a community when we're working together and finding the solutions each neighborhood that works for their neighborhood. So I very much enjoyed it, and thanks very much for inviting me. And
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Vice Chair Martin.
Thank you. It's been a good meeting. Yeah, a lot of the issues that are raised are common throughout the city. I mean, obviously some are very specific to the neighborhoods that were mentioned, but the general themes are common throughout the city, and it's for that reason that Councillors Carpenter and Toski get support when they want an all-way stop or when they need a pedestrian crossover, because other councillors want them in their wards as well. And just a reminder about the Vision Zero. We're working very hard to get on the queue for red light cameras and automatic speed enforcement. And as soon as the province opens that up, we're hoping to be first in line and be able to get into those programs and see some improved safety on our roads throughout the city.
Thank you, Vice Chair Martin, Police Services Board. Paul McDougall from the Neighbor Association. Any comments, sir?
No, just thank you for having us. On behalf of Mandy, thank you for having us. And anyone out there, look us up, look up local neighborhood association. There you go. Customer contact.
Okay.
Or Richard Carpenter, Cheryl and Toski. Thanks for having us.
Chief Davis.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Hillary had to drop off the call, but on her behalf as well. And Robin Matthews Osmond, our communications manager, she was on the call as well. I want to thank them for being involved. But thank you to you two. I've said this before. This is the playbook that every ward should be looking at if they want to have meaningful meetings that can engage everybody. And I applaud you two for the meeting in September and this meeting. And I have my list here of things that we can action. And I want to thank everybody that took part in the call that gave the feedback that can allow us to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And we didn't invent the playbook. We actually stumbled across it. Cheryl and I didn't know how the first meeting was going to go, and it's gone well. And we've had a lot of people show up, but it may be the approach we need going forward for ward meetings for councillors, not only because of COVID, but when COVID's gone, it allows people to access us from their home when it's convenient for them. You know, they have put kids to bed. They've got to get ready for school the next day. There's lots of things that people have to do rather than drive to a meeting. And it seems to be more productive even without COVID, but it does take some more staff time, Maria Basazzi. Sorry, I always get that wrong, Maria, sorry. Thank you for your assistance. We wouldn't have been able to do without you. And as Cheryl said, the clerks that are behind the scenes, that's staff time. And we as council need to probably look at how we're going to make sure that staff time can work, and we could do more ward meetings like this across the 5 wards. This is only half of our ward. We still have to do Brentwood Park next, but this is working. So we'll, as a city, have to look at how we can make this a permanent kind of ward meeting structure process to get more people involved. And of course, the mayor will be involved. Everyone, invited everyone. Thank you. I can't be at everyone. He's got a busy schedule. So. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I didn't want to commit you. Look at that, 7:59 right on the time. Thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it. You'll be seeing some reports coming to council on some of these things very shortly. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.